We cannot afford to be so politically correct anymore. Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo.
Please continue to hold for the next available representative.
Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo.
We appreciate you waiting and waiting. What is it you're waiting for? Do you even know anymore?
These are people who work hard but no longer have a voice. I am your voice.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another live stream. We have more primaries that we're going to be covering tonight. We already have results out of West Virginia, and there goes on the face cam. We are back. We are ready. We have some results to cover already. We have presidential results. We have Senate results. We have gubernatorial results out of West Virginia. It's very early on. Donald Trump, so far, again, Nikki Haley's best county already has reported its early votes, and she's well below 15. That's for all the crowd that likes to say, why isn't Trump getting 99% of the vote? He probably will get close to 90, though, in West Virginia, especially as more results pour in across the night. But still, you look at this, Joe Biden, he's doing worse, or actually just about the same as Donald Trump is in his primary. Obviously, less turnout there. But you look at the Senate race for the Democrats, Don Blankenship, he's down, but Jim Justice is defeating Alex Mooney. That's anticipated. Justice was going to be very hard to beat. I think it's going to be like 60-something to 30. Mooney is somebody who is better than Justice on the issues. He was not initially propped up a whole lot because Manchin was still thought to run for re-election, but now he's out of the picture. Justice is probably going to be the nominee and honestly, hopefully serve one term in the Senate. He's already old, but Patrick Morrisey, he is currently leading. He is the Trump-endorsed candidate for the governorship. He has earned that endorsement. He would be better than Jim Justice, and as a result, he is currently in the lead, although not in a big lead. But keep in mind the areas that are in, including the University of West Virginia area, probably one of the more liberal parts of the state. That county almost flipped blue, and it could flip blue. It's not going to matter because it's one county in the entire state. The state's getting redder. It's arguably possibly the reddest state in the entire country at this point, which is ironic because back in the 90s, you saw kind of the opposite. This was Bill Clinton country, and it's become Donald Trump country over time. Then there's some other races for Attorney General we see here. In terms of House, we have some results as well. And so far, Riley Moore is in the lead over Joe Early and Chris Walker. And in terms of North Carolina, we have results where Hal Weatherman is most likely going to easily win his lieutenant governor runoff. And then in the 13th district, it seems like Brad Knott is going to win this district, but there's really not a lot of votes here. I don't believe that this is a district that seems to be remotely competitive to my knowledge. So North Carolina, that's basically it. We already have the results in that we need. But in terms of Maryland, the polls are going to be closing there. What's going to happen? You know, Larry Hogan, is he going to advance? But who's he going to face off against? That's the real question, because Trone and also Brooks are both awful candidates for different reasons, and Democrats may have to spend money defending that seat if Larry Hogan advances, which he most likely will advance to the general election. So we'll have to see what happens on that front. And then in about an hour, we have Nebraska. Nebraska will be closing their polls down ballot. There's some interesting primaries like the Senate primary. John Weaver, is he going to have a chance against Pete Ricketts? I wouldn't bank on it. He didn't really have any money. But can the state party endorsement kind of give him a respectable standing? That tends to be the real question. As we kind of do more of these states and get more of these down ballot primaries over with, we're going to have a lot of them this summer, even going into July and I believe even August. So do stay tuned. We are going to be covering these for a while. It's not like the presidential primary coming to an end is going to stop the flow of election results that we'll have coming in, because we will have quite a bit of them coming in. But West Virginia, still early. They're reporting results, and we're looking at some of the results that are pouring in here. And it doesn't seem like we have any new results. We could look at the presidential results until more votes are put in, because that means more votes are going to be put in down ballot as well. So we will keep tabs of that. Also in the other congressional district, the first one, you have Derek Evans, who is very, very much MAGA, unabashedly America First type of candidate, going up against Carol Miller. Will he be able to knock her off? She's an incumbent, but Evans has gotten a lot of publicity. It's a high-profile primary challenge. Is he really going to have that much of a chance? We're going to have to see how it shakes out, but still do keep that in mind, that when you have these congressional races with Trump on the same ticket, obviously maybe not as much now than when the primaries were still somewhat competitive, but you do kind of see the down ballot effects be a little bit more MAGA in the primaries, and we'll see how that shakes out tonight. That one county down there, Trump at 94, Haley at 5, 29%. And how's that county going in the House elections? So that's the real question, because this is decisive. So far, nothing. They have not reported. So we will keep watching the results, but also we do have super chats that we'll be getting to as well. If you guys want to send in super chats throughout the night, feel free. I'll be getting to them as they come in. We already have 2 from Johnny Heartdog, 1 for 20, 1 for 10, saying, when I leave for Alaska, I want to get free, so I'm going to be pulling out my retirement and paying off my debts, because I think the economy will crash, and I don't think it'll be there when I retire. Interesting. Also, we took a 25% hit last year, and I would rather be debt-free now than take a chance and it'll not be there when I retire. I'll pay off my debts and put the rest in savings. Fair enough. I mean, you want to be, getting that off your back. It's something that's completely understandable. You're afraid the economy, it's already in turmoil. It's in flux. We don't know what's going to happen. Anita DeKimmy says Minnesota definitely going red this year. We'll see. I'm hopeful. You see these polls that have it close, the same polls that were pretty accurate in 2020 and 2022, they're showing the same thing for Minnesota now. And it's like, yeah, you look at the primary data, not too good for Biden. He's got a massive base issue, and that's going to definitely possibly affect things in a state like Minnesota. Also, Gerald Armstrong says, I watched clips of the Jamal Bowman debate and didn't realize that his primary opponent is so cross-eyed, it's distracting. I say let them eat each other. I didn't see what went down in that debate, but we have another county that's coming in. Yeah, Trump in the early vote in West Virginia is getting close to 90% of the vote. So much for him losing his own party. And it's an open primary. Democrats are going to cross over. We know they're crossing over down ballot, because there are a lot of down ballot races that in a state like West Virginia, they know the Democrats aren't going to win. So they want to cross over and cross over for people. Obviously, Jim Justice, they'd probably rather have. And then you look at the governorship, Moore Capito is running. He's going to get crossover votes. A lot of these people are. But still, Patrick Morrissey with an 11-point lead. We will see what happens. But yeah, Trump getting a better percentage than Biden. Obviously, I don't think it means much. It's West Virginia, but I don't think that the Indiana results are like a danger sign for Trump either, because you have crossover votes. So Citrus Peppercorn says, I think Trump gets better percentage than Biden tonight. We will hopefully see that. I think we will. Trevor Hint says, voted Trump, Deb Fisher, John Glenn Weaver, and Adrian Smith. Well, Nebraska's polls close in about an hour and 2 minutes, so we're going to be watching the results as they pour in. Andrew M says, are Shelley Moore Capito and Moore Capito related? I believe so. I could be wrong, but I'm like 90% sure they are. I mean, there's just no way. That'd be a really big coincidence there. But Trump, so far, better percentage than Biden. We'll be going to Maryland in about 2 minutes, where Biden, I'm sure, is just going to easily go out there and do very well, I'm sure, in terms of the percentage, because it's Maryland. And he does have an uncommitted option, though, so we will watch the uncommitted. He probably does get below 90, but we'll see how much below 90 he actually gets, because it's Maryland of all states. But Trump in Maryland, I believe it's an open primary. It seems like it's an open primary. I don't know if you're going to see a big Haley vote, though, because Democrats have their Senate primary, so there's going to be less of an incentive for people to go out there and cross over. So I don't think her percentage is really going to be all that notable in terms of how high it's going to be. But Maryland is a state that the Republican voters there, some of them are typical Rhino voters, your Hogan voters. So, again, I wouldn't read too much into it. Anita D. Kimmy says, are we rooting for the weatherman? Who's the weatherman? Who's exactly the weatherman? I'm not entirely sure who you're referring to in terms of what race. Okay, Maryland is closed. Okay. I didn't know that. So Maryland's closed. West Virginia's open. I think Nebraska is open. Oh, no, I think it might be closed because they do party registration in Nebraska. Let me see. Nebraska closed primary. It doesn't exactly say. Somebody in chat will say. Oh, Hal Weatherman. Okay, I thought you meant like somebody's running that is a weatherman that's like running for office. Yeah, I mean he's got the nomination basically. I mean it's pretty obvious that he's the better candidate anyways, given the fact that you look at where O'Neill is doing strongest, and it's typically in some Democrat areas. Kind of should tell you which side is probably the right side to be on for that primary runoff. But Weatherman was always going to be that guy to be the nominee. So, and they do run separately. They're not running on the same ticket. It's not like Pennsylvania where they nominate a lieutenant governor, but like that guy just happens to join the ticket. This is, Mark Robinson's seat technically, and Republicans are looking to hold that. We'll see if they end up holding it at the end of the day, but the auditor's race is close. Not like it's a really high-profile position. But we'll go back to, actually, polls closed in Maryland, but we have nothing out of Maryland yet. We have absolutely nothing out of Maryland. West Virginia still at 6%. Trump is outrunning Biden. There's no uncommitted option either. Biden's at 81. You have the ancestral zombie Democrats, just like you have the zombie Haley voters. All New Year 24 says, why did the Florida Panhandle move left in 2020? I'm not entirely sure. Could have been maxed out. Did every county really move left? It seemed like it just kind of stagnated. It didn't really move right as much in 2022, partially because Republicans are just maxed out. So it's not really a top concern. I'm proud of you says, do you think Biden will ever get pressed about the diary revelations at any point in this campaign? Probably not, because the media will never talk about it. And if Trump brings something like that up, then he kind of risks them kind of bringing up the old, like, Access Hollywood stuff. Like, I think that's kind of why Trump didn't mention the whole Tara Reade stuff back in 2020, despite the fact that, Biden had these allegations. But then Biden's just going to say, well, you allegedly did this, and then he'll just deny it. I don't know. But I'd probably let the people on the social media front just kind of talk about that. I don't know if Trump is necessarily going to get any political brownie points talking about that, but it just is what it is. So let's see. John Waffle for 10 says West Virginia needs to get out of their backwoods ways. Jim Justice is a rhino. They don't want Mooney because he's a carpetbagger. Yeah, I know. Mooney usually underperforms in a lot of these races for arguably that reason alone, but he is winning some counties in his district. But the whole NRSC, everybody's backing Justice. They backed Justice because they thought Mooney couldn't beat Manchin. I always thought Mooney could beat Manchin. I would have voted Mooney if I lived in West Virginia, but people like their governor, and that's what they see. Oh, he's got the dog. They'll vote for him. So what can I say? But I agree, he's pretty weak. He's pretty mediocre, but he'll only be there for probably 6 years, and he possibly could lose a primary. He'll be old if he's actually that much of a rhino, so I'm not super worried about it. He's an upgrade over Manchin because at least he'll be like a party line vote sort of thing. Then you have Patrick Morrissey. Yeah, he's got the lead. He's probably, as of now, I'd say he's favored here. But in terms of the House races, Derek Evans, he's only at 34%. It's not looking good for him so far, but again, there's not a lot of votes that we have in. It's 4%, but still 34%. He's not doing that poorly, but it seems like Carol Miller's going to hold that, so unless something drastically changes. But keep in mind, a lot of this does tend to be early vote too. Jackson Moore says, does Larry Hogan have any chance in the general? I personally think he should have ran in 22 because it was an off-year election. He would have had a better shot, but I would say no. I know he's up in the polls, but we see this all the time. People that are popular governors like Bill Weld in Massachusetts running for Senate and then getting his ass handed to him by 10 to 15 points. So it's a common theme. Now, Hogan being the nominee is probably a net positive for every single reason. Because A, he is a rhino, but he's probably going to lose, so we don't have to hear from him again. And B, because he probably could have some positive down ballot effects for House races and things like that. So if he wins the primary, I think it's good, but I think he's a lock for the primary. I think the general just tends to be where the concern is. But just like the polls that have Sherrod Brown and John Tester winning, the polls with Larry Hogan winning are also just not going to age well at the end of the day. So let's go back to West Virginia. 7% of the vote is in. Doesn't really seem like, Biden in this county is only at 54%. That's funny. Biden is not doing so well. The Don Blankenship vote is hurting Biden. You're seeing that. Don Blankenship, who was a Trump supporter, and then he got mad at Trump because Trump didn't endorse him. He's like a funny character of sorts. He's actually not that bad on the issues. And then he flipped to being a Democrat. He's running in the Democrat primary, but it's not like Democrats are going to vote for him. But it'd be funny to see him win the nomination. He's just not going to. And none of these guys are going to come close to winning in the general at the end of the day. So someone in chat is mad I called Hogan a rhino. Well, like I said, I think that you have to be a rhino to win Maryland. I know that Trump can't win Maryland, obviously. I'm well aware. He's probably the best they can do. I'm not expecting him to be great, but in terms of him being a senator, that means he's going to impact the Republican Party in the Senate. He would be better than Trone or also Brooks, but he's just not going to win. I'm just saying we'll never have to hear from him again. It'd be a net positive thing. Also, Citrus Peppercorn says, isn't Don Blankenship the Cocaine Mitch guy? He is. All New Year 24 says, I live in the only Biden precinct in Okaloosa, Florida. Interesting. Alex Sorico says we need 51 seats because the 50th vote would be Ruben Gallego, who would nuke the filibuster, unlike Manchin. Yeah, it's bad when John Fetterman is going to be the most moderate member of the U.S. Senate, and he will be if, or he basically will be in general in terms of the Democrat side. The most moderate Democrat went from Joe Manchin to John Fetterman, who we expected to be like one of the worst. And he's still not good. He's not based. It's all posturing. But, rhetorically speaking, he's probably the most moderate one left. Think about that. Alex P. says Gunter or Brown in Nevada. Gunter's better on the issues, but he really doesn't have much of a shot in the primary. Sam Brown is definitely going to be the nominee in my book. Like, I just can't see him losing it at this point. He's got all the money. He's got the name recognition. He overperformed expectations in the 2022 primary. Sam Madsen says, will Hogan win Frederick and Anne Arundel counties? I think Frederick, I would say he'd win Frederick. Anne Arundel, I'm not entirely sure it's possible. He's going to outrun Trump probably by like 10%. I would think, but he's still going to lose. But again, nominating him is probably the best possible move. So now Trump went up to 85.2. Let's check the down ballot races. Don Blankenship with a primary so far that he's leading. He's leading in a county in Mingo County. Is Biden? Biden's only at 58 in that county. There's a kind of a little bit of a correlation you see there. But you look at this, Jim Justice, they're going to call it for Justice any minute now. I mean, it's pretty obvious he's going to win. And Patrick Morrissey still leads by 7, but there's a lot of counties that are not giving him full support right now. So we'll see at the end of the day if that number is going to hold up or not. But the House races, Evans is at 35. And Riley Moore is leading in the 2nd district. He'll be better than Mooney. He's not going to be like phenomenal, but Mooney wasn't phenomenal. He was obviously better than McKinley, better than Justice for the Senate race. But now they're going to see a slight upgrade there. But it seems like Derek Evans, is he actually going to be able to win? It's early, but I would probably lean towards no as of now, but we'll see. Someone said Justice. Well, Justice was the Trump-endorsed candidate. It doesn't necessarily mean he's the MAGA candidate. I feel like people don't have a coherent way of defining what defines MAGA. Because is it people that Trump endorses? Because by that logic, Mitt Romney is MAGA, and we know that's not the case. Or is it people that conform to Trump's agenda and principles? That, I would say, is probably more in line with MAGA, and definitely you have a lot of people in between. But it's not like that every person Trump endorses is like, oh, this person's the ideal candidate for his agenda. Obviously, he endorsed Justice mainly because of the fact that Mooney, A, he didn't believe would win the primary, and B, may have caused a close general election against Joe Manchin. GJ says Hogan is absolutely a rhino. I live in Maryland. He shut down the whole state during COVID and waited until after Trump left the office to come aboard with reopening schools. He was vocal against Trump. Exactly. That's what I said. He's the best that Maryland can do, but it doesn't mean that he's not some sort of a rhino, because he is. Manny says, can Hogan help Trump overperform in Maryland? No, it would be the opposite. Trump would be hurting Hogan, but Hogan probably wouldn't win anyways if Trump was on the ballot or not. Alex Sirico says, thoughts on a boycott on all non-MAGA in Republican states? Well, that needs to happen in primaries. I mean, general elections a little bit different. But absolutely, if you have some candidate like the ones in Nebraska, like Ricketts, and then you have John Weaver, who's objectively a better candidate and better on the issues, but you vote for Ricketts, you're doing Nebraska a disservice. You should be voting for the best possible candidate that can win a general election. Sometimes the best possible candidate you might resonate with on the issues can't win a general election. So we kind of have to bridge the gap between the two to kind of build up the party and make sure we can still win and get things done as much as we possibly can. Rick Rod 95 says if a court date falls on September 11th and Trump attends the 9/11 memorial site instead, would the deep state be crazy enough to arrest him on the spot? I mean, they might try to hold him in contempt or something or fine him. I don't think that he's going to have any court dates that fall on September 11th, though it seems like this trial is going to be ending fairly shortly. I mean, there's really no crime. There's no crime. I'm still trying to find the crime that Trump committed because it's not there. They haven't told us how Trump falsified any business records or how Donald Trump tried to cover up a crime. Where was the crime? I mean, this was already an openly investigated thing by the FEC. They closed it. Now it's being reopened conveniently after Trump announced his 2024 presidential bid. Why was that? It was because they were trying to go out there and they were trying to hurt Donald Trump's chances of winning the election and nothing else. That's all it had to do with. But Trump now is at 85.2%. More of these counties come in. He's getting close to 90. You're seeing that. And Jim Justice, he's going to win that primary. Patrick Morrissey still in the lead. A lot of these counties are close. They're very close counties, except this one. But the other counties that have Morrissey down, he's just barely down. And this county's also down. Chris Miller is tending to do well in this part of the map, but he's not going to win. He's only at 17%. So let's check in on Maryland. Do we have any results out of Maryland? Do we have any? It does not seem like we do. We have no results. We're waiting. Anthony Solomon for 5 says, thanks for the show. Well, thank you for the super chat. So, yeah, Trump's trials it's going nowhere. If you had a fair trial or a fair judge, it would be thrown out for a million different reasons. If you had a fair AG, it wouldn't have even been a case. If you had a fair jury, they would decide to throw it out. But we know that this is an impossibility. So while I think that it probably ends in a hung jury, there's a sizable chance that Trump does get convicted. I'm not saying he's going to get jail time or anything like that, because I think they know it would backfire if they did that. But I think they are trying to go out there and try to hit him with something. It's a humiliation ritual. They know they can't win and beat Trump on their merit. So this is the type of thing that they have to resort to doing. And we see that. Let's see. We have some deranged DeSantis supporter in chat. That's pretty funny. Tell me how a distant second place in Iowa worked out for him. Yeah, he's such a strong candidate. Such a strong candidate that he couldn't even get 22% of the vote in Iowa despite basically living in the state for a year. Such a strong candidate that the more people saw of him, his numbers nosedived. Yet you're going to tell me that he's the guy that can pull people over the top? Ridiculous. Michigan Nationalist for 5 says we should stand with Islam because they're anti-counterculture. Michigan, not Pennsylvania, is the bellwether state in 24. Pennsylvania's suburbs are zooming blue and Michigan's a gold mine. Well, I disagree with the notion that the Pennsylvania suburbs are just going to keep zooming blue off a cliff. It's just not true. First of all, there's not been that many people moving to them since 2020. Second of all, just because you see trends in one election doesn't mean you're not going to hit a wall with them. I mean, we saw that in a lot of rural counties in 2020, for example, despite seeing a spike of turnout where Trump, didn't exactly gain. And in terms of Islam being anti-counterculture, I mean, it's not exactly how it works. You want to build a coalition. Yeah, if Muslims want to vote Republican, that's fine. It doesn't mean we need to sit there and pander to Islam or Muslims or whatever. I mean, if we're going to be completely honest here, they voted Democrat. The only reason why some are voting Republican, some is because, yes, I mean, they're socially conservative in many aspects, and there's some coalition there. But also, I mean, it's the whole conflict in the Middle East, and many of them won't even vote for Trump. They're just going to vote third party or not vote at all. I mean, it helps us. But saying you need to pander to Islam is not a big demographic. Islam is, not even 2% in Michigan of the population. So I would think that it's kind of a little pointless to pander to them. Why it's to stand with Islam and lose the what? Exactly. Islam is, the popularity of Islam as a religion is not super high. It's not. So do what you will with that information. Andrew M. says Patrick Morrissey lost a mansion and barely won his 2016 AG race. Something is wrong with the guy. I mean, he's not that strong electorally, but he's going to win the governorship if he wins his primary. But I'm surprised even with the Trump endorsement, this is what he's doing. I mean, he's a weak candidate overall. He's he's good on the issues, but yeah, if this holds when, it's all said and done, 34% with Trump on the ballot and a Trump endorsement, that's not ideal. That is not ideal. I'll say that much. He should be doing better. And they called it for justice. Let's check some of these other races. Did they call it? They haven't called it for either one of the congressional districts, but it's looking increasingly likely that Riley Moore is going to win in West Virginia. We can go to Maryland. We have nothing in Maryland, so we're going to stick with West Virginia. Yeah, Biden at 80%. It's not surprising. When the results are all in, he probably is going to be doing worse. But there's no uncommitted option. The guy that's in second place is the guy that won American Samoa. Like, if they actually had a serious candidate on the ballot, maybe they'd be doing better. Like Dean Phillips, I mean, he didn't run a real campaign, obviously. But what can I say? Citrus Peppercorn for $20 says, do you think all the liberals that harped on Trump down 20 points to someone that dropped out in Indiana will talk about how Biden's losing 20 points to some people they've never heard of in West Virginia? I'm joking, of course. No, of course they won't. And honestly, some of that might be due to crossover voting. I'm not going to lie about that. I mean, a lot of the people that aren't voting for Biden probably are going to vote for Trump and did vote for Trump. And they're voting for like Don Blankenship or something. But that's not the point. You saw the inverse in Indiana, but they were running with it as some, proof that Donald Trump is all sorts of finished. Mitchell Ryan says, how do you think we as a country can stop? I don't know what that is. I don't know what you mean by that. Jeremy G says, what did I miss? Nothing. Literally nothing. The Green Renegades is for 2028. What would be your dream ticket? Mine would be Vance Hawley. See, again, this is the thing with the VP. I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding of the role of the VP on the right. I like both of them, but the problem is they're too similar. If you're JD Vance, you're going to have to pick somebody who, in the circumstances, would help you cross the finish line. Hawley is somebody that is a little bit too similar to Vance for him to be on the ticket, and you put him in one of the most useless, overhyped positions in politics instead of putting him in the Senate, where he belongs, where he's a really good senator. So one of those two on the ticket, yeah, it's good. But I don't know. It depends who runs. It could be Vance. I don't know who the running mate would be. I don't know who would be chosen. Shout out to Derek for becoming a full member. Mitchell Ryan says central bank digital currency. I think it's an awful idea. It is. Let's see. We can go back to Maryland. We have nothing out of Maryland. North Carolina, we already covered. There's really nothing of note in North Carolina. I think the guy I think that Daughtry actually dropped out and endorsed not. I think that's what the rationale was, why he's doing so poorly in a runoff. I could be wrong, but somebody did that in some race. But let's see. We're at 14% of the vote in. Doesn't seem like anything's new. Don Blankenship is at 17%. He's not going anywhere, but we'll see. But Morrissey's only up by not even 4 points. I mean, this is crazy. If you're not only up by, he did go up a little bit, but he's not doing too well. He's not doing too well so far. I guess this is just what happens when you don't run that good of a campaign. But we'll see. He might be able to win. Somebody mentioned Katie Britt as VP. If you've watched Katie Britt over the past month or two and you think that that's the case, you need to reconsider because she is somebody who is a meme. She is somebody who's not even that good, and her State of the Union response was so bad based off of how unnecessarily dramatic it was that the takeaway for a lot of people was not Biden gave a terrible speech. It was, look at this crazy woman just with this crazy voice, like she's acting. It's not genuine, you know. We need a VP that's kind of, I'd say, lower on the controversy thing. We need somebody who's not going to possibly be so much of a gamble where it stops Donald Trump from winning. We need somebody who helps him win. That's it. So many people, I feel like, don't understand the role of the job, or they overrate the influence. I care more about the chief of staff. I care more about the advisors. I care more about even some of the cabinet secretaries. Who's Trump surrounding himself with more so than who does he put in this position? So long as they're not a total backstabber, because there's a chance that they could assume power, but we shouldn't really be thinking about that. And if you pick somebody that's like so good, and if Trump is like the, recipient of some sort of crazy plan, well, who's to say they wouldn't also be the same recipient of the plan? We have to understand this. It's deeper than what some people think. Sam Madsen says, how close will the governor's race be with Morrissey in the general? Probably not close at all. I mean, he's probably going to still win by maybe like 20 points or so. It's true that West Virginia down ballot's different, but we have so much polarization now, even compared to 2016 when the Democrats won the governorship of West Virginia, and that guy now is the Republican nominee for Senate in West Virginia, which is something. Okay, Maryland, do they have results in yet? They do have results. Biden's only at 84.4. That's not good. That's not good at all. I know it's early, but still, closed primary, 84%? Seriously? That's brutal. That's not where you want to be. Like Trump, I understand, because Maryland's full of Larry Hogan voters. This is about Larry Hogan. There's no MAGA Senate candidate, and there probably doesn't need to be because it's Maryland. But Hogan, if he's up like that, he's going to be the nominee. David Trone and also Brooks are neck and neck. Trone spent a ridiculous amount of money, but he's only at 50% so far. But it is early. It is very early. We'll see as the results pour in. We've got about, 36 minutes before we get results out of the state of Nebraska. But yeah. Manny says, is Nebraska moving to the left because of Omaha, Lincoln, and Native Americans? A lot of people are moving there. Kearney and Grand Island are expanding. Well, just because people move to a state doesn't mean that the state's going to move left. I mean, you could look at Florida, even Texas in many places, and see that it's not entirely, always the case. But I don't really know. I don't know. I think Nebraska's kind of stagnant. Maybe Omaha's getting more liberal, but I don't think the 3rd district is getting much more liberal. I mean, Lincoln's always been like a college town, but that district is pretty stagnant as well. Personally, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Down ballot, they still are somewhat Republican in the Omaha area, but we'll see. We'll look at Trump's results in Omaha and see if he's actually polling well enough to win that 2nd district, because that's a huge electoral vote that he needs to win. Because if he wins that and then gets all the states he's up in the polls by 5 points or more in, he's going to be the president. There's no questions about it. It'd be the most chaotic election ever because we'd have a 269 tie, but it's a very plausible election result. It's very plausible. So, yep. In fact, the Biden detractors have pretty much, I believe, combined as many votes as the Nikki Haley voters, many of which are from Monongalia County. And she can't even crack 20% there, and that's crossover central, because that's the most Democrat part of the entire state at this point. Even more Democrat than Charleston. I'm proud of you says most overrated and underrated fast food chains. Overrated? I mean, I don't know. That's tough. I mean, there's so many of them. Honestly, Burger King is awful. I'll say that. Burger King is just absolute trash. I don't know if it's overrated, though. I think that a lot of people accurately dunk on it. I don't know. I think McDonald's is it's a little bit overrated. I think it's not like ridiculously overrated. It's not bad. I think Culver's is underrated. I think that Whataburger, I know it's blasphemy to say in Texas, but I think it's a little overrated. Not really a big fan. I mean, it's all right, but I'm just not a big fan of it. Culver's is underrated. In-N-Out, I think, is perfectly rated. I think it's good. Yeah, Trump. Okay, I don't care. It's irrelevant. I can't wait for all the people. What did Trump even get in Maryland in the 2020 primary when he was a sitting president? I'm pretty sure he was below 90, if they even had a primary. They did. He got 86 to Bill Weld, who dropped out. But apparently it's bad for Trump because he's not getting 95% of the vote in Maryland. Okay. Still, I mean, there's not even a lot of these areas that are in are anyways not even going to be the most friendly areas, but it doesn't really matter. He's going to end up with like 75% of the vote. He only got 86% last time against Bill Weld. Nikki Haley is more of like a fit that people know for Maryland Republicans than Bill Weld. So be it. Let's see. And same people upset at that. Like, this honestly means about as much as this, which is Biden getting 76%. He's a sitting president, gets 76% of the vote in any primary is a red flag to a certain degree. And he's at 17% of the vote is in. He's falling. Look at these counties. He's at 55, 49%. He's not even getting a majority in Wyoming County, West Virginia. That is not good. Yeah, obviously Maryland was called for Trump. We know that. What happened to crossover vote? It's a thing. I mean, it's still a thing, obviously. It's a thing here even, but there's just not that many Democrats in West Virginia. I mean, this is probably, some of this is from crossover vote. I'd be, lying if I said it wasn't. But it's not quite enough to really make up the entire difference. North Carolina, yeah, we know this is already a done deal. We're waiting on Maryland to produce more results, but so far it seems as if David Trone is leading, but he's not leading by a lot. And Joe Biden at 84.7%. See, they'll be mad about this. They'll be mad about this, despite Trump not being an incumbent president and Maryland being a state that even a lot of registered Republicans don't vote for Trump in the general. But then they look at this and they'll say everything is fine. Biden is just fine. It doesn't matter that he's only getting 84% as a sitting president running up against nobody. Nobody knows who these people are. Dean Phillips, even in his own state, didn't get that good of a showing. Nobody knows who these people are, but Biden can't crack 85% in Maryland. That's a blue state. He should be cracking 90. State with a lot of black voters too. We were told that the primaries were proof that Biden has no problem with black voters. Well, if this margin stays the same at the end of the day, I think that goes out the window. But I think the main takeaway probably in a lot of these races like Georgia, South Carolina was just the low turnout and enthusiasm that Biden had, not so much what exact percentage he was getting in these primaries. So you look at that. We have more super chats. Lou Jack Martinez says, if every Trump voter from 2020 recruited one new Trump voter, game over. We're going to see if how many Joes come back. Thoughts? I agree. Trump is gaining voters more so than Biden is losing just because of the vital stats of our economy, what's going on in our country at large in general. Faux Shizzle for 10 says, before the New Jersey rally, John McLaughlin said Trump was in 5 and within 10 in New York. If that is true and holds, could we see some upsets down ballot in those states? Absolutely. Absolutely. They're not high priority, but should Trump go to Minnesota? Yeah. Should he go to Virginia? Yeah. I mean, he could possibly make a play for them. Either way, if he does his rally strategically, yeah, do a rally on the border of North Carolina and Virginia. You're killing two birds with one stone. Do it with Minnesota and Wisconsin. You kill two birds with one stone. You're basically expanding the map and still reaching the voters in the swing states that you need. That's what he did with New Jersey, even with Pennsylvania. A good portion of New Jersey's in that Philadelphia media market that couldn't get the rally off the TV. So when you look at that, he's doing exactly what he needs to do. He's doing exactly what he needs to do. Somebody said adjust the size of the screen. I mean, this is pretty much all I can really do. I mean, I don't know. You want me to start zooming in where people are going to be upset that I'm too zoomed in? I don't know if I could pull that off, but let's see. Yeah, Trump is now at 79%. I'm assuming these are early votes. I don't know. It's possible. We'll see. And we'll see how that affects this race too, because Angela Alsobrooks, is she going to get the nomination? David Trone has all this money, spent all this money. He's a liquor store CEO, it seems, and a congressman. But is he going to be able to go out there and win? We'll see. Michigan Nationalists saw Marcy Kaptur ad at Cedar Point. Can we win Ohio's 9th district? Is that even the 9th district? I thought it was... I guess it is. We can. I don't think an ad you see is going to determine if we're going to be able to win the district or not. But again, she's a tough incumbent to knock out. But I think we got a better shot this time with Trump on the ballot. I'm proud of you says, who's your favorite historical presidential candidate who never won a primary, and who is your favorite who never won the general election? Well, I guess we could use Buchanan in 92 and 96, and we can use Ron Paul in 2008 and 2012, and we could use somebody like a Taft in 52. In terms of winning the general, I'd have to think about that one, because a lot of the Republicans like Bob Dole in recent memory that have lost, and we got votes in out of Baltimore County. See, Biden's still at 88% there. It's a little bit better for him, but there's a lot of votes that poured in out of Baltimore County. Larry Hogan winning 72% of those voters. And then you look at the Democrat primary, David Trone, he's leading the early dumps out of Baltimore. Not the city, but the county, which tends to be less Democrat, but still, it's a very liberal area. But in terms of favorite presidential candidate who never won a general election, I have no idea. I have no idea who I could think of at the top of my head. Maybe, I don't know. I'd have to get back to you on that one. Because there's nobody that's lost one. Like, if you assume, like, I'm not talking about people that only serve one term and lost re-election, or quote-unquote lost re-election in some cases, because technically you could say Trump. Goldwater, I mean, he had pros and cons, I guess. But, I mean, if he did win, it'd be interesting to see how the country would shake out, for sure. You got the early votes out of Anne Arundel County and Howard County. Very early, though. Very early out of Howard, 1%. So that's where Haley's getting a bump in. The Green Renegade says, my answer for the best POTUS that never was Goldwater? Maybe. It would have been interesting to see how he would govern if he won. But like I said, he was very libertarian on many fronts. It'd be very interesting. A lot of people tried to frame him as kind of like a war hawk as well. Pegs on for 5 says, who's Trump's endorsed candidate for governor? And Let's Talk Elections was mega coping and full-on shouting in the recent vid about the New York Times poll. I'm shocked he even made a video about the New York Times poll, because every video he's put out for the past 7 months has been this poll that's like 1 out of every 10 polls looks good for Biden. And it's like, I know I have a bias. I'm not going to try to hide that or gloss that over. But when you have a channel and you're like, oh, I'm actually the unbiased arbiter of the information, and every video you make is a left-leaning cope, whether you think the cope is legitimate or not, it's not objective after a certain point to say that you're unbiased. Just admit it. In terms of the Trump candidate for governor, it's Patrick Morrisey, and he's not doing that well right now. But again, he tends to be an underperformer. Let's see. Okay, now we have new results. New results. Prince George's County, that is a big county by D.C., heavy black population. Angela Also Brooks is up to 69% of the vote there with 26% of the vote in. She has taken the lead. That is huge. Now, they don't have votes in, it seems, for the Republican primary or for the Democrat primary either. But when you're looking at this, that's huge. Prince George's County, 26% of the vote is in. There's going to be 74% more. That's huge for Also Brooks, but we'll see if Trone is able to do well in Baltimore City. I'm not so sure he is, if it's like a racial divide that we see. We know Trone's going to run it up in the Panhandle. We know, because that's his district. That's kind of like where he's from. There's no questions about that. He might do better over here in some of the eastern part by Delaware, but is he going to do well enough in, okay, now we have more results in. Again, Also Brooks lead is basically only coming from one county, but that might be enough, assuming she gets Baltimore, but I'm not sure if she will. We have 15% of the vote in. We have a long, long way to go. And Robin Ficker, who I guess is like the more conservative candidates, winning some of these rural counties, which is not too unsurprising, but Hogan is likely going to obviously take okay, there's more results in that they put in. Hogan is up by 40. Hogan's going to be the nominee. I'm not really expecting anything else. But we don't have, do we have anything? Okay, we do have Prince George's County in. So far, Biden in that vote dump, he's getting 95%. So that's taken his lead up. And they also put in Baltimore, where he's at 88, which is, pretty mediocre. But at least his numbers have gone over 85%. And it seems like also Brooks has taken the lead in Baltimore City, like I anticipated. But still, we've seen big vote dumps, but this is still a horse race. But Trone is really running it up in the rurals. That's crazy. But still, you look at the county map, and this is where also Brooks is winning. It's the heavily black populated Prince George's and Baltimore City. That is where she's running up the margins. And Charles County. This is basically decided, it seems, on racial lines. And also Brooks so far is looking good for her, because there's a lot of black Democrats in Maryland that we know, but still, Trone spent all that money, and he's down by 2,000 votes, 24%. And long way to go, though. Long way to go. It's not even close to being quite over just yet. But let's go back to West Virginia. We got 20 minutes till polls close in Nebraska. Trump is up to almost 87% of the vote there. As more votes do pour in, there's nothing in out of Charleston yet. But I can't anticipate him not hitting 80% there. He hit 79 in Mongonalia. That might go up. We'll see. But the governor's primary, that's the intriguing one, because Morrissey, despite being Trump endorsed, he's only at 34%. He's probably going to win it, but there's still 74% left of the vote to count. We'll see how that vote ends up shaking out down the stretch. As for the AG primary, it seems like John McCuskey is going to win that. And then on the Republican side, for House, you have basically an open seat and a seat with a primary challenger. Derek Evans, he's at 34%, but he's not likely going to win. And then Riley Moore with a 26% lead with 48% of the vote with the vote in. It's very likely that he's going to end up winning that seat. That's like almost to the point of it's probably going to be called sometime soon. So there's that. Let's go back to Maryland. Let's go back here. Yeah, Larry Hogan. They called it for Hogan, but also Brooks is in the lead. Tommy Lea 1 says, who's the weaker candidate to run against Hogan? Also Brooks or Trone? Both are weak for different reasons. Also Brooks is very far left, but Trone tends to be a very, very bad individual electorally when it comes to how much he typically underperforms by. And he spent all this money, and right now he's down. He could win, but he's not strong either. I don't think either are particularly strong candidates. But we'll see. Yeah, 2,000 votes separate these two candidates. There's not really a clear favorite at the moment. You look at the counties that are mostly in. I mean, Baltimore City's 21%, and it just seems like these are seems like these could be early votes too. We'll see how it shakes out. A lot can happen. A lot can happen. Alex Rage says, when do we get Rep v. Packman debate? I have no idea. I don't usually do debates often on the channel, but we'll have to see. Check out North Carolina. We already checked out North Carolina. It's a done deal. There's no competitive races besides state auditor, but I mean, I don't even know anything about that race, and it's not really a very prominent position. Republicans likely hold it. So, but yeah, Biden 75% in West Virginia so far. Some counties is below 50%. Trump getting closer to 90 with a lot of vote left to count. 70% of the vote left. Trump is at 86.3% of the vote in West Virginia. So, we'll see. Is Morrissey going to win? Probably. I'd have to say so. Also, guys, like the stream down below. We got 2,000 viewers. Like the stream. Let's get to 1,000 likes. Hit the bell. Subscribe. We're almost to 180,000. We have to get there. We're not going to get there if people don't subscribe. So like the stream down below. If you have not yet subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We want to get closer to 180,000. So let's see. Now we could go see if there's a few down ballot races in Maryland. Seems like Neil Parrott is going to defeat Dan Cox. I didn't even know Kim Klacik was running again, but we'll see. I think she wins the primary, but that's pretty much about it. None of these other races are really all that notable. Andy Harris is going to win renomination, which is good because he's one of the best in Congress. So nothing bad on that front for sure. But it seems like, I mean, a lot of what's in Maryland so far seems to be like mail-in votes, but how does that impact the Senate primary? We're also Brooke saw a late surge. Does that mean on election day that those voters are going to, be more likely to back her? I mean, it's possible. We'll see. As we get more water, we're about an hour into the live stream. We don't have anything too surprising yet. We got a close Senate race in Maryland, and we have easy primary runoff victories for certain candidates in North Carolina. West Virginia seems like Patrick Morrissey is not doing super well. He's only at 34.5%, but he did increase his total a little bit, it seems, from earlier. But there's a lot of vote left. It seems like they just stopped counting in West Virginia at 30%. Doesn't seem like there's been any. Okay, now it's 32. But for the governorship, I think it's still at 30. But for the presidency, it's now at 32, as more votes are pouring in. So, yeah, Maryland is one of the most it is arguably up there. It's the most gerrymandered state in America. They say Republicans are the real gerrymanderers. No, not really. I mean, you look at Maryland, you look at Connecticut, you look at a lot of these states, what they tried to do in New York, what they do in Illinois, what they do in a lot of these states. They understand power. They always play victim, and they get what they want, despite them doing the same thing. It's very telling. Yeah, Illinois is bad. There's more. Just the portions of the Voting Rights Act that basically mandates these DEI affirmative action districts that only go one way but not the other, that basically gives Democrats like 5 to 10 seats in and of itself for no reason. So it's not good. Milky Way Gaming says, how do you know the polls aren't wrong like 20? Well, we don't know. That's the thing. But at the end of the day, how do we know they're not underestimating Trump like they did in 2020 and 2016? He's on the ballot. So he was not in 2022. That definitely impacts turnout. But I think that polls are one metric. I'd use other metrics like when we start having early voting, get the early vote data, see how that's shaking out as well. I mean, there's plenty of there's plenty of polls that are going to be showing Donald Trump in the lead. We've seen them, but we have to kind of ignore them at certain points and just put our heads down and vote because you don't know. You don't know if the polls are going to be right. You don't know if they're going to be wrong. I personally think that the polls are not going to underestimate Republicans by a lot, or that they're going to overestimate Republicans by a lot, because when you look at the polls up until early voting began in many key states in 2022, the polls were on point, but then you saw shifts to the right in the final weeks, possibly because of a response bias, because we know that people that vote early are the type of people that end up voting on, voting more left-leaning, and the people that vote on Election Day are the people that tend to be more right-leaning. Now, maybe you're going to see that change, depolarize a bit as Trump is promoting early voting and people getting absentees and whatever, but still, it's a good thing he's doing that, because that probably helps him out by 1% to 2% in every state just by itself. So they're correcting the problems of 2022 and 2020 from a messaging point, from an election integrity standpoint, with the RNC doing what they're doing to, have all these poll watchers at the polling places and making sure that every ballot's going to be counted properly, and they're going to have their own people. Mr. Jimmy says, thoughts on Harry Dunn for Congress, and is he a grifter? I don't know who this guy is. I actually have. He's the guy running for Maryland's 3rd, and he was a Capitol Police. Yeah, this guy's just created in a lab to be like a Democrat donation sink, basically. And let me see if he's even winning. He's not even winning right now. That could change, but he's not even winning. It's not working out too well for him. But if he's the nominee, Democrats are going to be spending, the small dollar donors are going to be backing him up for a safe blue seat. Okay. I don't know exactly what it's going to amount to, but we got a long way to go. Let me check also Brooks is still in the lead. And in West Virginia, it doesn't seem like a lot. Okay, more results have come in, and Morrissey's lead went up to 7 points. He's about to hit 35. So it seems like he's doing pretty well in the part of West Virginia that's like the northeastern part. That's a part of Mooney's district. It seems like he's doing well there. The numbers, or at least his margin, seems to be going up, at least on net, as more votes are counted. But Justice was declared the victor. That's not unexpected whatsoever. Charleston came in, and Trump is at 77% in the early vote there, which is not super surprising. We'll see how that shakes out as more votes end up getting counted. He crossed the 80% threshold in Monongalia, or however you pronounce that county. But we have 40% of the vote in. Trump is at, close to 90%. He's going to get closer to it as more votes get counted, because the big, bluer cities are in. So also Brooks is winning in-person votes by huge margins, according to somebody in chat. But how many of those have been reported? That's the real question. Because it seems like we don't have any counties that are reporting them in a great number. So I don't know if I can fully say that. But, yeah. Trone is not winning. Somebody asked in chat. He's losing by 1.1%. But he spent a lot of money. But if this is his best showing and the remaining votes all come in for also Brooks, that's not good. But I don't know. I don't know what percentage of the electorate voted by mail or voted early or voted on Election Day. We have yet to see. But Larry Hogan, 67.9%. He's going to be the Republican nominee. Trump easily winning the Republican primary, outperforming Larry Hogan. Joe Biden, so far, he got to 90, but I think he's going to probably go a little bit below as more votes do get counted. Baltimore City, he's not even to 90. Baltimore County, he's not even to 90. In some of these other places, he's in the lower 80s. So, all right, let's go to Nebraska. Polls close in 8 minutes. We don't have any results. Perry Johnson's on the ballot. That's very interesting. But we have Nebraska. We'll see what happens in Nebraska when the results pour in. So, let's see. It doesn't say if it's open or closed. I'm trying to find out if Nebraska's opened or closed, because that's going to tell us a decent amount about the results in Nebraska. So, we'll see. So, if somebody else in chat wants to find that out, because I couldn't find it. It wasn't giving me an answer on Ballotpedia. Oh, somebody says closed. Okay. Well, Trump should be getting around 90-ish%. Maybe not 90, maybe a little bit below if it's a closed primary, but he should be getting around there for sure. Let's see. Let's go back to Maryland. There's no votes, no new votes. So we're just stuck. We're just stuck waiting. Seems like Parrott is favored in the 6th district, but there's a lot of votes that haven't been counted, and we know that. Obviously, Trump's going to win every single county, but we still have a long way to go. We have 6 minutes until Nebraska closes. Someone said focus my camera is focused. Now, it could be something on your end, but seems relatively focused to me. Yeah, I don't think Don Bacon loses. Don Bacon is running up against somebody that doesn't have like a Trump endorsement or anything of that sort. And it is a rhino district, so I'm pretty sure that he might suffer from the Hogan effect where voters will back him anyways because they feel like the other guy would lose the general. Kind of how Fitzpatrick was able to win 60-some% of the vote in his district. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll have to see when the results come in. The polls close in a little bit under 6 minutes as of right now. So we'll go back to Maryland. And we have nothing new. So we have nothing new. Exactly says, oh, I hope that the Dunn guy loses. Well, the Dunn guy's losing. Dunn might be done. He's down by 9 points, but still 27% of the vote in. The vote that comes in later could be drastically different, could back Dunn. There's so much we don't know. So it's still early, but this is a dogfight for the Senate primary so far. You have 2 weak candidates going head-to-head, going up against each other. Not sure what it amounts to, but they called it for justice. I believe they're going to end up calling it for Glenn Elliott, who's going to be the sacrificial lamb for the Dems, especially because he's doing so well in Charleston so far. But again, with the Charleston, Morrissey, he's again, you talk about an underperformance. He's back down below 34. That gap between the two is 4.7%. So we know it's either going to be him or Capito at this point. But I think Morrissey wins, but it's just a low performance. It's not really all that solid. And this is a guy who can drop the ball while campaigning. He lost to Joe Manchin. If he was stronger of a candidate and campaigner, he probably could have won. But we'll see. I think he's going to win the general because it's a governor's race. Trump's on the ticket, but in and of himself, he's not that strong of a candidate. He's not. Even if he's, better on the issues than a lot of the people that he's going up against. Yeah, we know Maryland's a closed primary. South Dakota's primary is not tonight. That I don't think has happened yet. I think it happens the last primary day on Super June's Day. Also, guys, make sure you like the stream. Let's get to 1,000 likes. We're so close. We're so close. We got 2,000 viewers almost, but we don't even have 1,000 likes. Let's get to 1,000. Let's do it. We're 27 away. But yeah, we'll see how Nebraska decides to vote in some of these primaries. You have a lot of these rhinos, but then you have candidates who the state party backed, which is good, but then they don't have any money, which is bad for their chances. So are they going to be able to outperform expectations? Is Trump on the ticket going to actually have some positive effects? We'll see. Craig Moats, his thoughts on the state of the North Carolina governor's race. It's close. It's close. It was looking like Robinson was the favorite, then he wasn't the favorite, but now it's kind of 50-50. If Trump wins North Carolina by like 4.5 points, which the polls show him doing now, I believe Robinson is going to win. I think that's like a sure thing. But they do like to split their tickets. They do. And they've always been that way. You've had one Republican governor going all the way back, I think, decades. And the attorney general's race is interesting too, because you've never had a Republican attorney general in a very long time, from what I understand there. So Republicans stayed at the top of the ticket, and then down ballot maybe a little bit more swingy, a little bit more open. So I think Trump's going to win. My theory is that running somebody for governor with the same last name as a very high-profile third-party challenger, you have Josh Stein, you have Jill Stein. How is that going to impact the race? Probably not too well for Biden. Now, I'm not saying that it's a guarantee to really mess up a lot of people's ballots when they're trying to vote, but even like 0.1%, 0.2%, like that matters when it comes down to some of these down ballot races and the effects it may have. Absolutely. W Pistol says, thank you for the coverage. Well, thank you for your support and your super chat. We have 2 minutes before we start to get any results in. We're going to see how it shakes out. W Pistol, thank you for becoming a member. A member on the channel. You get the badge. I think we have about 90 people with badges. They come in from time to time. So thank you for becoming a member. But Nebraska, we got less than a minute. So let's go back to Maryland before we see if we have any results. So Biden falls below 90. Okay. And that we know. Also, Brooks, nothing's changed. Also, 5 gifts from W Pistol. Shout out to all of the members that were gifted. Thank you, W Pistol, for... And now there's more votes in, and also Brooks gained and Trone lost. So maybe that's a recurring theme. If Trone's at his peak right now, that's brutal, but there's a lot we don't know. There is a lot we don't know, but he could be near his peak. We'll see what happens. But 5 new memberships were gifted. And Trump is above 75 with the latest vote dump, which leads me to believe that these are election day votes that are coming in, which possibly could hurt Trone. Do we want Trump? I honestly don't care. I think that if you look at the polls, they're pretty much even, regardless of whoever the nominee is. So I'm not entirely sure how that's going to shake out. Could Youngkin be? I mean, I don't think Youngkin's on the short list. I don't believe he's in consideration. I think he wants to run in 28, but I don't believe that he's going to be on the short list. But, I mean, we've seen crazier things happen. Much crazier things happen. But we'll see. Now, we'll go back to, okay, Nebraska. We don't have any results yet. We're probably going to get them in a few minutes. Let's see if they mention how the results came in last time. No, they don't. Sometimes they do. This time they haven't. Yeah, we're not putting Haley on the ticket. Haley is Hillary Clinton DEI edition. And she happens to claim to be a Republican. That's another difference. She'd be awful. So I have no desire to put her on the ticket. I'd rather you put Pence on the ticket again before putting her on the ticket. Oh, we have votes in. Already, big dump. So far, I'm assuming these are mail-in votes. I'm assuming they're mail, because Trump is only at 68. I know they're going to screenshot that and put it all over Twitter before Trump climbs up in like the actual vote dumps that we'll see. But yeah, that's the early vote. So far, Biden at 94% on the Democrat side. 20% of their votes in, but only 6% of our votes in. So what does that tell you? It tells you it's mail-in votes. And so far, Pete Ricketts is in somewhat decent shape. I think that number goes down, though, as election day votes come in. And then you look at the down ballot races. Don Bacon, he's only at 71%. A lot of that is a mail-in vote. So that number is going to go down for sure. But again, that's so much. It's crossover vote if you see people just voting down ballot, for these candidates people haven't heard of. They're just being contrarian. I guess you have a lot of ancestrally registered Republicans or something there. But it doesn't matter. Trump's fine. He's almost to 70 now that more votes are being counted, and we see that. So we'll keep monitoring the results out of Nebraska. We'll keep monitoring the results out of Maryland as well. Also, Brooks's lead is still 1.4%. Let's go back to West Virginia. Biden's below 75 right now. Charleston's his best showing so far, but even then he's not at 85. You look at the Republican primary, Trump almost to 87. Morrissey got back to 34. I think Morrissey wins, but that margin of victory is not very high. They called it for McCuskey. They called it for Riley Moore. They're probably going to call it for Carol Miller because there's no way that 70% of what's left is going to go for Derek Evans. There's just no way that's going to happen. So, yep, that's where we sit right now. Trump at 87, Biden at 74. Maryland, Biden's at 89. Trump is lower in Maryland, but again, you look at the places where it's early vote, but it's like red counties. Trump's at 89, 87. That's like what you'd expect. But there's some vote dumps that are early mail in some of these other places. Probably Biden voters that are registered Republicans too. It's not like that. You look at the data, it doesn't even add up. Prince George's County, it didn't even give Trump 10%, yet he's getting what seems to be at least 10% of the vote in so far, or close to that, seems to be Republican. Maybe not. But I'd say around there. Seems to be that there's about 3,000-ish. Base Cat says, thoughts on some colleges canceling their DEI. Well, I mean, that's a good thing. I really feel like there's a pendulum shift. And maybe this is why Trump is doing better. Because when a side overplays their hand, you will see a pendulum shift in the other direction. We've heard about it. Is it going to happen? Is this going to happen now, or will things get worse before they get better? And I don't want to be, sound complacent when I say this, because we still have to keep fighting, of course. But I feel like things are getting better. I really do. Like, you see, because they know that it backfires after a certain point. The establishment overplaying their hand, what has it exactly done? Think about it. Now, maybe I'm wrong, and I hope I'm right, but there is some energy shift. It's not definitive, but I feel like Democrats 2020, 2021 overplaying their hand. You have people now, they're not even coming out to endorse Biden that did endorse him. And that does include celebrity endorsements, which I don't think move the needle electorally very much. But in terms of gauging enthusiasm in the current state of the culture, you're not seeing as many. Maybe it's because they don't want to, piss off the genocide Joe crowd on the far left. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but something has shifted. Something has shifted. I think that we're starting to win the cultural argument in some ways. Maybe it's because Elon bought Twitter. Maybe, I just don't know. It honestly feels too good to be true, which is where the skepticism comes in. But I feel like I'm not wrong for saying that it feels like there's been some climate shift. And that possibly could carry Trump to victory for all we know. Just Leave Me Alone says, what do you think about Doug Mastriano being VP? He's loyal to Trump and fought like hell on 2020. I think that you need to... I don't know. I don't know if you're being serious or not. That's the problem. Because if he's so good and would really help Trump, why did he lose by 15 points in 2022? I mean, let's be real here. The guy is a nice guy, but Trump didn't even want him running for Senate because he's a liability and would be a liability on the ticket. He didn't have any money, he didn't run the best campaign, and he had a lot of baggage. So I don't know how you could put him on the ticket and say it's a very good thing, because I don't believe it to be so. Maybe Congress in a safe red district, maybe that could be an interesting starting point to revitalize his electoral political career. But Luke Newman says, I don't know why LTE won't own his bias, because that's how the left wins, I guess. They control the narrative. If CNN is apparently, they're nonpartisan news, even though they obviously have a bias that they don't honestly own, they're just shameless about it. That's how they win. That's how they win. And maybe you could say, well, why do you say you are? But I just happen to be maybe just too much of a realistically, I guess you'd say, an individual of integrity. I don't know. Maybe too much, who knows? But that's not the point. We'll go back to West Virginia. Trump cracked 87. It's only getting better for Trump at this point forward. He possibly cracks 90. Sven Olsen's thoughts on Phelan v. Covey. I hope Covey destroys him, but is it going to happen? There's a lot of big money on both sides in that race. Hopefully ours is the one that wins it for us. Punch Bear says, I hope we see some fried bacon tonight. Well, I wouldn't get my hopes up, but we'll see. He's at 70%, and a lot of that's early vote, but I don't know if the remainder of the votes are going to come in, 60-40 for Fry to make the difference. I think that it could be within 20, but there's just a lot that we don't know. I don't know. I don't feel the need to sit here and talk about the liberal counterpart, because I think that we're, 5,000 ahead? I think we're kind of entering a league of our own. I could be wrong, but that's the vibe I get. Bacon supports. He does support pork in Congress. It's true. He fights with people on Twitter too much. He did endorse Trump, which I guess he gets credit for, but then that comes after years of trashing Trump and his supporters. So I can't exactly say it's enough to really move the needle. But again, I think there's people in that district and they're like, yeah, well, this other guy doesn't have a big showing. He doesn't have a lot of money. And they really feel like Bacon's the only one that can win the district, which is possibly the case. Maybe if Trump is actually doing so well he's winning the district, it wouldn't be. But I don't know how the down ballot effects are going to be this year. Trump usually underperformed congressional Republicans. Maybe he'll overperform this time. I don't think it's going to be by a ridiculous amount, though. But I think a lot of that has to do with Biden. Biden is just not well liked. Sven Olsen says, is there a Republican running for Maine 2nd that you like? I think there is. Maine congressional 2024 elections. Let's see. I think we could find this. Let me go down to Maine. Yeah, there are candidates. Actually, I don't know either of these people, so that's the first district, I think. The second district, you have, again, two people I've actually never heard of. You have a former NASCAR driver that Trump endorsed. I think he's the guy. Seems like he's going to win the primary. Could he win the general? It's possible. But Jared Golden does actually play the moderate game well, even though a lot of it is kind of fake and overstated. He's like the Joe Manchin of the House, basically. So, yeah, we'll go to, let's go to West Virginia. And doesn't seem like we have any new. Yeah, Morrissey's up by, again, 4 points, 50% to go. I think he wins because he's had like a 4 to 5 point lead all night. But I don't know. Olivia Williams says Hogan winning is like Manchin winning West Virginia. If he can't outrun Biden by 25 to 30 points, we're too polarized. Also, do you worry about the Constitution Party? No, I'd be more scared of the Libertarian Party, and I'm not scared of them at all this time. So I'm not too worried whatsoever. They're not really running a candidate of note, it seems. And Trump is going to their convention, so maybe he'll peel off some of their voters. Luke Newman says, I won't lose any sleep if Don Bacon loses in November. I wouldn't either. But if he loses in November, it likely means that Trump loses the district, which is something we don't want to happen, but it's not like Trump needs it to win. But if Trump loses Nebraska second, he needs a Rust Belt state, which I think is doable. I mean, he's up in all of them, but you'd like to have that added security. You'd like to have it. Just leave me alone, says my personal choice is Ben Carson for VP. I was just asking a question. Well, Mastriano would not be a good choice. That's the answer. And he's a nice guy. I wanted him to beat Shapiro, but he just didn't run the best campaign, and that kind of was a problem. Now, I don't think anyone else would have won that race, even if they did run a good campaign, because it just was not a good year for down-ballot Republican governors. It just wasn't, besides Nevada. But like these open seats, you know, you look at the approval rating of Wolf, it was high in 2022. You have a guy basically running as his third term, but also claiming that he wants to cut taxes and support school choice and all these like center-right things. And it's like, of course, that guy's going to beat the guy he outspends 50-1, while the entire election, or at least the first few months of it, were made about abortion. Because that's a state issue. And people see that. But I don't believe abortion's going to do Trump in, because, like I said, it's a state issue. And as more in-person votes have come in, Trump's lead in Maryland's going up. He might go up in the 80s for the record. Sale805 has been following you for 3 years. Keep up the work. Well, thank you. It's 3 years. It's been a long time. But yeah, I mean, we've gained about half of our following almost after the 2020 election, which is something. But we've gained a lot more as we head into the 2024 election. But again, guys, make sure you guys subscribe if you're new, so A, you can access the live chat, because you can't do that if you don't subscribe, for one. And for two, make sure that we can get closer to 180,000. We'd like to hit that milestone sometime soon. We're almost there. But Nebraska's pretty meh. There's nothing there. It's all mail-in votes. Probably a lot of ancestral Democrats or ancestral Republicans or what have you. But Also Brooks is at 3%. Really? Yeah, Also Brooks is gaining. More votes have come in. She's gaining. She's taking the lead in Kent County. She's gaining. You said Mastriano's campaigning sucked, but what policy? Well, I honestly think his policy platform, like, he obviously is like super right-wing, but he didn't have the resources to compete, where it just was made a total liability. It's not that I disagree with him on abortion entirely. It's that he basically came out and said no exceptions and didn't have any money to defend himself. And this was right after the Dobbs decision. You know that it was going to hurt him. Now, if the Dobbs decision never happened, I don't think he would lose by 15, even with being outspent the margin he did. I think he probably would have lost by closer to 10. Republicans may have done better in the Senate races. Mean Gene in Florida for 10 says, thanks for your insights. Very appreciated. Well, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, you talk about Trump's position. People were upset at Trump's abortion stance, but his stance is like basically what he's always had. He obviously he's not like one of these evangelocons that's really strong on the topic. But his position kind of is one that relates to a lot of independents, where he says, leave it up to the states. And even though that's what Roe did, and even though a lot of people said that they were upset with the decision to overturn Roe, in terms of the implications of it, Supreme Court decisions usually lead to a ridiculous amount of complacency. They did that during the Warren Court, when everything was very liberal and people were upset, but that just became accepted. And even gay marriage, 40-some% opposed it until the decision, and then it went down to the 20s. And I don't think that's a good thing, because, you look at how the slippery slope is the way it is. But leaving abortion up to the states is something that I feel like always has kind of been something positive, and now people see the effects of it. They may disagree with the state laws, but how is that Trump's fault? It's funny because there are polls that show more people credit Biden with overturning Roe than Trump. Maybe they don't know that much about politics, but it's true. He's been president. His approval rating on abortion is awful. Like, you would think that he'd be positively approved on it, but how can you run and win on abortion when, only 15% of true independents say they have an approval of your way of handling the topic? It's abysmal. Abysmal. So, yep, Trump is inching closer to 80, as we expected. But also, Brooks is also gaining, as we also kind of have deduced would happen. But we have more primary votes in, again, very early in Nebraska. Not a lot is in. Douglas County's in. Trump's only at 68, but that a lot of that is early vote. He'll probably get around, 80 when it's all said and done, I would assume. But you're not seeing good turnout anyways. On either side, you're not seeing good turnout. I mean, you're really not. Douglas County, 60%. Yeah, Biden's going to end up with like 30-some thousand votes there. Trump's probably also going to end up with 30-some thousand votes there. So I don't know how you can sit back here and say Nebraska second is over because of the primary. Okay, by that logic, Trump's going to win Minnesota because of Biden's primary. And, West Virginia is a warning sign for Biden because he might get, at the rate things are going, like below 70% of the vote. Luke Newman says, can Yvette Harrell win back her seat in New Mexico? Possibly, but it's unlikely because they redistricted the map. Apparently, the Voting Rights Act doesn't apply to white people. It's racist. It's DEI. And you look at that, well, Yvette Harrell, that's why she got kicked out of her seat, because they drew 3 Hispanic majority districts. Now, it is true Hispanics are moving right, possibly, so maybe that could backfire, but there's just a lot we don't know to make that determination, to make that claim. But Trump, yeah, he's getting more and more of the vote as the votes pour in. He's getting closer to 90. I don't know if he hits 90, but he's going to get about that. So you see that. We'll go back to Maryland, where even then he's getting closer to 80. With a third of the vote in, he's getting closer. He's now at 71 in Prince George's. Also, Brooks there's been no lead change. So we'll look at Nebraska. It doesn't seem like there's any surprises so far, but there's been no election day vote, it seems. So, yeah. Can Carrie Lake win again? Well, she's going to have to really run even with Trump. That's like her best bet. So we'll see. Now, the primary, that's interesting. It's funny because she's running against Mark Lamb and Mark Lamb only, who I think she was like friendly with before. She said if she didn't run, she wanted him to run. And then he goes out there. He's not even running a campaign. Like, he's on the ballot, but he's not running a campaign at all. If he actually was running against Kerry, he'd be trying to hit her on like the whole abortion thing or something to generate, enthusiasm. But I don't know. I think he might just be on the ballot for like insurance or something, because it doesn't seem like he's going to win. But he doesn't even do events. Like, he's not running a campaign from what I understand. Also, Brooks's lead went up again. Did it now? It did. 50.1. And Trump's went up too. So I think this might be an election day sort of ordeal. Now, I'm not ready to call it for also Brooks because there is a lot of vote left. But still, just these counties can dictate the state, but it seems like she's going to take the lead in Baltimore County too. Exactly says, could we have several house flips in New Mexico and Nevada in a year with Trump on the ballot? He drives Hispanic voters like no one else. Yeah. I assume you mean in a good way, because he does. It's, when Trump is on the ballot, he tends to drive out Republican Hispanics like no other, especially with the whole border crisis going on. The economy in shambles. yeah, I mean, even John Ralston, of all people, who I guess proved me wrong about Adam Laxalt, despite having literally no reasoning behind it other than the fact he didn't like Laxalt, he thinks that even though the New York Times poll is flawed and an outlier, which it is, he still thinks it's horrible news for Biden and down-ballot Democrats in Nevada, and he's absolutely right about that. So more votes are pouring in, it seems, in the state of Nebraska. Yeah, 49% of Biden's are in, but only 18% of Trump's are in. Think about that. He's got 60% of the vote in Douglas County in for him, but Trump's only at 41% of the vote in. So it would make sense that the early vote would probably benefit Biden, benefit Haley. The later vote's going to benefit Trump, some of these primary challengers, but Pete Ricketts has already won. That's pretty much a done deal. Mike Flood has won. Adrian Smith's going to win. Don Bacon, honestly, his margin's going to go down, but he's going to win. Just Leave Me Alone for 10 says abortion is an issue with me. I aborted 2 babies early in life. I'm a grandma with 3 kids and 5 grandbabies. I was wrong aborting life because it wasn't convenient at the time. I mean, a lot of people feel this way. And a lot of people, I mean, you look at the statistics and data, a very higher percentage or proportion of women than you would imagine have gotten abortions. So I think that it is important that when Republicans discuss the issue, they need to come and approach it with a, I guess you would say, a compassionate angle. Try to help out women in tough situations so they don't have to abort the child. You know, propose legislation that kind of, would address some of those concerns in the meantime. Because if you come out proposing a ban, it's going to get rejected. First of all, the word ban is a dirty word. You never want to use it unless it's something that most people hate, which sadly most people don't hate abortion. And in the intermediary, yeah, get it banned in states where you can get it banned, like Wyoming, which they don't have one, and then kind of chip away at the weaks because, some states have abortion laws that are archaic and more in line with China and North Korea and, Soviet Union type things than what they even have in the liberal Western Europe, where they have a 12-week abortion ban. You can't even get that passed nationwide without severe blowback. So that's kind of what it has to come down to. Let's see. But I don't think New Mexico is going to have several House flips. I think that Nevada could have every seat flip under the right circumstances pretty easily. But I don't really know if Republicans are running super strong candidates. I don't know who these people are. Will they outrun Trump? Will Trump outrun them? There's a lot of questions. Johnny Hartdog for 10 says, thank you for not criticizing my decision to pull out my retirement when I leave. So few people understand sometimes in life the unconventional decision's the right one. Well, if you're young, I don't know how old you are. You don't have to tell us. But if you're like in your 30s, yeah, I think it's a good idea because you don't know what's going to happen. And if you want to pull that out and I guess you would say spend it on your moves so you don't have to, have as many expenses in the intermediary, then do it. If you're afraid it's just going to be squandered to nothing, I don't think it's that big of a deal. You can always rebuild. I guess it depends on how old you are. But I understand it's financial freedom, basically. So long as you make enough to live and you don't plan on retiring soon, I don't think it's a bad decision. Yeah, Deb Fisher's at 79%, it seems. Let's go back to West Virginia. Donald Trump at 87.4%, 65% of the vote is in. He has 130,000 votes. Biden has 51,000 votes. So that's insane. Jason Palmer hitting 10%, and I believe his first caucus where he hits that much since his victory in American Samoa. The only person to beat a sitting incumbent president in any contest where both were on the ballot since it seems like 1980, when Ted Kennedy won a bunch of states against Jimmy Carter. We didn't see that primary challenge this time. I feel like if you had a primary challenger for Biden that was a serious primary challenger, they'd be doing serious damage. Even if they wouldn't win, they would do a lot of damage and possibly hurt Biden during the election, but Democrats are falling in line. We see that. It's not really making that much of an impact. But let's go to Nebraska. Yeah, Trump got to 71. Seems like more votes are indeed pouring in. Sarpy County seems like he's going to get around 10,000 votes there when it's all said and done. Biden in the county seems to only get around 4,000. Again, that's part of that, second congressional district type of ordeal as well. But again, primary data can only be used as some sort of a minor metric to predict an election. It does kind of show that when it comes down to a state like Texas, that Biden did not really have a very good showing. Barely outrunning 2012 Obama in terms of raw votes. Not a good sign. But Trump is gaining in Maryland. Let's go down to the Senate race. Yeah, also Brooks is at a 5-point lead right now. Now that's crazy. She's really running up the score in these areas. Prince George's County, she's at 71%. That's something. We've been going for an hour and 41 minutes. Make sure you guys like the stream down below. Let's hit 1,500. Let's hit 180,000 subs as well. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell if you are subscribed too. Make sure that you don't forget to do that. For sure. We're getting closer and closer. But let's go back to the results. So every winner's been called. Of note, I believe maybe in the governor's race, did they call it for? They've not called it for Morrissey. He's still up by only 4.2. He actually went down, but there's still 33% left. I don't believe that those voters are going to break away from him by 7%. Because even though Morrissey's declined his percentage total, it's also because Miller increased his total, and that's partially why he's gaining there. So yeah, Biden below 90 in Maryland. That's decreasing as more results come in. But the Senate primary here, it doesn't seem like that any of the Alsobrooks areas are also mostly in either. I feel like she'd be definitely the favorite. Let me see if there's a betting odds market on it, but I don't really think that that's really going to tell us the whole picture. Seems like if we go into, is there a Maryland department? Doesn't seem like they have one. But they do have an election market here. But I don't think that they try to search it. They don't bring one up. You think they'd have it like in terms of what's being traded. But it doesn't seem like I can find it. So we'll see. We'll see. Let's go back to Nebraska. Trump's share increases as I said it would. But again, it's just like a very low turnout, period. But if you look at this, Biden's going to get likely less than 100K in the primary. Dean Phillips in some of these rural areas is cracking 20s. And then you look at this primary, Trump's going to end up with far more than that. He's going to probably end up with like 150, 160,000. So now part of it might be because there was less of an incentive to turn out in the Omaha area because you did have some, down ballot races that were contested on the Republican side, but none on the Democrat side. But I feel like it's a little bit deeper than that. It just, yeah. Apparently, we're going to hear about how Trump is in trouble in Nebraska now because he's not getting 90%, which, again, he probably, when it's all said and done, gets over, I would assume, over 80. But just because, oh, well, the early votes in some of these counties are not giving Trump the percent that he needs, it's like the guy's not an incumbent. I don't know what they expect of the guy. He's still getting 80-some% of the primary vote period. That's a good sign for an incumbent to get, or for a non-incumbent to get. Biden, on the other hand, how many votes is he losing? How many votes is he bleeding? West Virginia, it's 26, 27%. Luke Newman says, can Lauren Boebert win the open seat? Well, the open seat's deep red, so yeah, she can win it. She would win it. But I'm not entirely sure if she probably does get past the primary because she's got a lot of name recognition. I think she's got the Trump endorsement. There's going to be a lot of vote splitting. So it just is the way things are going in that district. But let's check these. Yeah, Morrissey's got almost a 10,000 vote lead, though. And it only seems like there's around maybe 40,000 votes remaining. He's probably going to win if I had to guess. Probably. I'd put a lot of stock in that. And they called Miller and Moore the winners of these districts. They're really 95% reporting. It doesn't make sense why they would be 95%, but not the other races. So Maryland. Yeah, also Brooks. I mean, we're only at 30%. That's the problem. We're only at 30%. So it seems as if also Brooks is going to be that nominee. So we'll have to see. But it doesn't seem like there's a lot going on right now in terms of the votes that are being put in. No big vote dumps. Maryland being Maryland. Being slow. Nebraska, being less slow because the polls closed an hour later after Maryland's polls closed, but still not a lot of votes that have been reported, a lot of votes to go. 80% of the vote is not in, but the Democrats have reported all of their early votes in these counties, which was a majority of the votes they've cast, but Republicans a little bit different. So we'll see. We can look in regular chat, see what regular chat has to say. Doesn't we have more votes in Maryland now. 3% more. Also, Brooks expands the lead. Sam Madsen says we are currently beating the Rhino president of the West Virginia Senate. I did not know that. Let's check that out. State Senate incumbent losing. Which district? Is it the 11th or the 15th? It's one of these districts. But yeah, there are a few incumbents losing, which usually is a good sign. M says, any plans if YouTube snipes your channel before November 5th? Well, we'll probably, we're still going to keep doing what we're doing if that happens, which I'd like to think it won't, but you never know. Probably go to Rumble and then go from there. But I don't know if it's gonna. It would take a lot, but it's happened before. We got it back, but I don't want to jinx anything, but don't want to say that it's likely or whatever. But yep. Also, Brooks has taken the lead in Baltimore County. That's true. That was going to likely happen, given the fact that it was getting closer and closer, and it was only thrown by 5 at the start of the night. Any MAGA candidates winning? Well, it depends how you define a MAGA candidate. It seems like Morrissey's going to take the West Virginia governorship, which is good. Down ballot doesn't seem like there's any like big upsets or anything, though. I already have a Rumble channel. The link is in the description down below. I post my videos there. I don't stream there. I've cross-streamed a couple times, but that was back when I used StreamYard, and I use OBS now, so I guess I could probably find a way to do it, but it's the 15th? Okay, it's the 15th. That's the Rhino losing in West Virginia's Senate race, or the down ballot Senate race, like the state Senate. Wagon 067 says, what's your prediction of Trump's percent in Oregon next week? Let me see. It depends on if it's a closed or an open primary, which it seems like it's closed. I assume he gets in the 80s somewhere. It's mostly mail. It's already basically a done deal. So I don't know how many people are going to turn out. So probably somewhere in the 80s. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. I mean, we're past the primary cycle. Trump was doing better in some places when Haley was in the race because more people were turning out for Trump than they are right now. But apparently that means that Blumph is done because he's getting less primary turnout. It doesn't fully add up and make a lot of sense to me. But, you know, what can I say? Texas state runoffs are May 20. Yep, that is true. Trump doesn't always endorse rhinos. That's not true. He's endorsed a lot of very good people. I mean, there's a lot of times where he could have endorsed rhinos and it would have really been bad. But you look at there's the fact that he gave us Hawley, he gave us Vance, he gave us a great deal of the congressmen that we like today just based off of primary endorsements. I don't think you could say that everybody he endorses are rhinos. Do I think that he endorses some rhinos? Yeah, but not everybody he endorses is a rhino, and not everybody he endorses is perfect either or the best candidate. So there's a few races where I wish he would have tried to primary people out, but it is true that if you pick those battles, there's a good chance you lose them, and then it's awkward having to deal with these people. But sometimes you got to like just take a shot at it and see what actually happens. I don't think he's endorsing Gonzalez. He's not endorsing Gonzalez. I don't think he's endorsing Herrera either because people around him are telling him that he made fun of his son because I guess he called him tall or something, which is objectively true. So I don't think that he's probably getting the perfect amount of information, but I don't think that he's going to endorse Gonzalez. I think he stays out of it. He did endorse against Dade Phelan, which again, if he only endorsed rhinos, he wouldn't have done that. So it's awkward when the person you stab in the back in the primary wins. Yeah, I mean, look at all of Trump's political opponents being a little... well, at least, you know, DeSantis did at least endorse Trump verbally when Trump got the nomination. Haley, on the other hand, still has not endorsed Trump. She's basically been quiet, which is probably a good thing that she's just faded away. But I don't think you're going to see any of these people endorse Biden. You saw a lot of Republicans like John Kasich and Rick Snyder and all these people come out of the woodwork to endorse Biden in 2020. But even then, a lot of those people are kind of not doing the same thing this time. The only one Biden picked up was like that moronic governor or lieutenant governor of Georgia that left office in disgrace because he had Trump derangement syndrome and can't even stomach some down ballot Republicans. So we'll see. Yeah, Biden's below 73. Oh, look at that. Another county, Webster, he's below 50. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. Even in Maryland, look, I said his numbers would go below 90. They did. So unless he sees some miraculous recovery of his numbers, seems like he's going to be below 90 there. You have how many votes against him? 31, 34, 35,000 already. That's going to be close to 100% or 100,000 votes against him when all the votes are counted. That's not a good sign for him. Trump is only probably going to have around 50,000 against him, but I mean, that's a Hoganite electorate too. Your registered Republicans in Maryland are not exactly your, typical registered Republican in a place like, I don't know, take Pennsylvania even, for example. But Trump's still going to crack 80. And in Nebraska, he's still going to crack 80 as well. I mean, we still have votes to count for sure. A lot of the votes in are early. He's going to definitely run up the score. Not very high turnout on either side, for the record. Yeah, I can't see Haley endorsing Biden. I'm not even sure Chris Christie's going to endorse Biden. He might, because he's opportunistic, but I mean, you run for president, like it would have probably happened by now, or maybe they're waiting for it. I can't see her actually doing that. I could obviously see her staying neutral, but endorsing Biden, I can't picture it. Especially of all the clips of her talking badly about Biden and how we need to defeat Biden on the debate stage. Yeah, I don't know. M says likelihood of, I assume it's Nebraska passing winner take all in the next session. Probably low, because there were very few votes for it to begin with, which is sad, but what can I say? They should pass it. They should pass it. There's no reason for them not to pass it. You're giving Biden a free electoral vote. Now, you could say Maine could counter, but they wouldn't have the time, because if Maine just countered, what that would do is they would have a petition to put it on the ballot instead, and they would probably get rid of it then, which would be a good thing in my opinion, because I'd rather have both states be winner take all than have, both of them be proportional. Just would make more sense that way. Now, Trump's got a better shot at winning Maine than Biden does at winning Nebraska. So, let's check Maryland. Wow. Yeah, more votes are in, 52 to 44. That's insane. This guy spent tens of millions of dollars to get 44%. When you're not likable, spending can backfire, and I feel like that very well could happen to Biden with his ad blitzes. He's already had ad blitzes, and his numbers have gone down. So, we'll see. It'd be cool. Yeah, it'd be cool if Trump won Maine, but I just don't know if the third-party vote share is going to be high enough for it to happen yet. Trump's about to hit 80. He honestly could get a higher share than his 2020 primary share. If that happens, there's a lot of people that are going to be eating crow about the early vote or whatever in Maryland. They honestly have a better case to make with Nebraska, but it's still extraordinarily early on. You have 20% of the vote, and we know how the election day votes are going to go. Over 90% for Trump. Easily. West Virginia, that's not good for Biden. 72.5, yeah. And that's going down, by the way. It's not like he's just there and he's going to go up and recover. He's going down. There's no uncommitted option either. Like, if there was an uncommitted option, would he even crack 60? That's a tough question. Nikki Haley went below 10% in West Virginia. That's brutal. Pegs on says, Rep, I'm 90% sure that Maine Democrats would have enough votes to change their system, or wouldn't have enough votes. Nebraska GOP has a supermajority. Maine Dems don't. Well, that's also possibly true. But the Nebraska GOP is dumb. They don't know what the hell they're doing. And they blame Trump. Oh, Trump doesn't own the state of Nebraska. Well, he's going to win it. People want him to be president. Why don't you actually just, allow that to happen at a more, seamless pace and process by just making sure that whoever wins the state gets every electoral vote? It would make sense. It's not like you're doing something strategic. It's not like the state's turning blue and you're saving 2 electoral votes. It's a R plus 20 state. Exactly said what percentage did Obama get in West Virginia in 2012? I think it was below, seems to be below 60. He got 59.3. But keep in mind, how many Democrats were there back then in West Virginia compared to now? That 40%, they voted for Keith Judd. They're probably all voting for Trump in this election, or they're the same people that are voting against Biden. But when you look at it, it's like, yeah, not entirely a fair comparison, but the fact that Biden's not doing much better, it's not really a good sign. In fact, Obama got 100,000 votes in that primary. How many did Biden get? Seems like he's not going to get that, despite there being more of a higher profile primary this time around compared to how primaries were years ago, because there's more political focus in this era. John Waffle says, what do you think of people saying Brit's the future of the GOP? Well, is the future of the GOP fake? Because that's how she comes off when she talks, and that's kind of a big problem that she has. Sam Madsen says 2 West Virginia state senators who voted against banning transgender stuff are losing their primaries 63-37 and 66-34. Well, that's good news. That's very good news. But just looking at this, yeah, he's going to crack 88. Question is he going to get 90? He could. He very well could. He should. How much did he get in 2020 in West Virginia? That's another question. I feel like he got above 90. I don't know if it was his best primary, though. Yeah, 94.3. I mean, he's not going to get that. But he got 198,000 votes then. He's going to get close to it now. Probably not exactly. But primary turnout in general has been down this cycle, period. You look at Biden in the Democrat primary last time in West Virginia. We could do that because that kind of gauges where things are. He got 65.3% of the vote. But that was back when he was a candidate. You had Bernie on the ballot. You had other people. Biden's a sitting president. He's not doing much better than that. He got 122,000 votes. His vote totals are declining significantly as well. So I think that's it right now for Super Chats. But we still have 2,000 people watching the stream. Like the stream. Make sure you guys like the stream and subscribe if you haven't yet subscribed. We're getting closer and closer to 180,000 subscribers. Do I believe Trump made a mistake by endorsing Bost over Bailey? Absolutely. I've said that many times. Why won't I respond to who will replace Vance? Well, I didn't see that question. I'm assuming that he'd be replaced by either Frank LaRose or Matt Dolan, which is not really a good thing. And probably why he shouldn't be one of the reasons why him being VP is not ideal. You know, you take somebody out of the Senate who's a very good senator, and you would basically put them in a figurehead type of position, and he's also seen as like to the right of Trump, which again, how does that expand? People will say, how does it expand the coalition? But at the end of the day, he's also like been never Trump in the past, so they're going to drive that wedge. There's a lot of potential questions for Vance as VP. I don't know if he's going to be chosen, but if he's chosen, he's chosen. I'm not going to be upset with the ticket regardless, it seems. Andrew Mortensen says, besides Minnesota, which state could go red? I'm assuming you mean states outside of like the swing states in the map this cycle. Maybe Virginia's talked about, but I'm not quite ready to move it into toss-up status. We've seen 2 polls that have shown it being close, which I think is encouraging. I just don't know if it's going to hold or what the results are going to be at the end of the day. Yeah, Trump is already up to 74%. Douglas County is at 73%. So he's gaining already in Omaha compared to the rest of the state, which I guess would be a good sign. It is true that more of the vote is in from there, so we'll see how it shakes out. We'll go to Maryland. where Trump is all, yeah, he's going to hit 80. In some of these counties, he's at 90. And some of these counties that haven't really reported a lot of votes in are, very blue areas. And even then, he's still gaining in them. They're not going to be light red at the end of the day. So, yeah, he's up by 60, 100,000 votes there. Biden, he's up by a lot, but below 88 as an incumbent sitting president, that's not a good look for him, even in a state like that. Yeah, he's going to win Maryland. We know it's a blue state, very blue state, one of the bluest in the country, but still. Yeah, it seems like Neil Parrott's still going to win the 6th district. Kim Klacik got the nomination there. I haven't heard much from her, so it doesn't seem like she's running as much of a high-profile campaign that's going to steal donations from candidates who need it, because that was the main criticism of her campaign back in 2020. But then you have also Brooks. Yeah, she's up by 10 almost. You think they probably would consider calling it. Kent County's actually tied. I think Alsobrooks was up there, though, earlier. So I don't know. The question is, does Trump outdo his 20% in Maryland? It's possible. And it would be more telling because Nikki Haley is more high profile than Bill Weld ever was. So that's important to consider. But Biden not even at 90 in Maryland. Nebraska, he's at 90, but turnout is so bad. It's so bad. It's piss poor. I don't know how much you can really extrapolate from that, especially because there's a lot of places that haven't reported yet where he's definitely going to go down with the election day vote. And he already has gone down. He might go below 90 there too. But we'll have to see. Perry Johnson, that might be the best showing he's got all year. I don't even know why he made the ballot there, but didn't make the ballot in a very large amount of states. Well, Virginia is mostly red, but the problem is that the population, most of it is concentrated in the blue counties at the top. The rural areas are a majority of the land in the country, but where the people live, they tend to be in a lot of these blue counties that are just packed. People are closer together. I don't know if it makes them more liberal or if that's the way liberals choose to live. I think you could make the chicken or the egg type of argument there. But yeah, it seems like Hogan's obviously, he's got the nomination. Even in some of the counties that voted against him, he performed relatively well. I think it's because people know that even though they don't like Hogan, nobody else can even come close to winning that Senate seat, even though he's not going to likely win that Senate seat either. Let's go back to Nebraska. Okay, we're still at 26%. Did they call it in West Virginia for Morrissey? No, but he did gain quite a bit. He's now up to, looks to be a 6-point lead. He's up to 11,000 votes. They have to call it. I mean, how many votes are remaining exactly? You've got 15%, 200,000 votes, maybe around 30,000 maybe. There's not going to be enough. There's not going to be enough ground for Moore Capito or Chris Miller to make that up. Even if they gain, this is going to be Morrissey's governorship. Assuming he wins in November, which he likely does, even if he's kind of not the best campaigner because you got Donald Trump on the ticket. He's going to win the state by 40. Justice won easily. Trump won easily. He hit 88. Will he hit 89? He's got some counties left. Keeps gaining in the ones that are reporting some votes. 88.1. Haley below 10% in West Virginia. Not a surprise at all. This might be Trump's best showing of the year. That's not like a caucus, because technically Nevada, he got 99%. He got every vote technically in Missouri based off of how they counted it. They called Maryland? Did they call it? Yes, they did. Also, Brooks wins. 39% of the vote is in, but she leads by 9. Yep. That's game. That is game. She has defeated David Trone. All that money he spent to do what? To get embarrassed by somebody that's on the far, far left. So, yep. There's a good chance the House flips, or the House seat flips that he's in, depending on what happens. I don't think Hogan's going to win, though. But we'll see. We'll see. Just when you have a disparity of turnout and preference with polarization, this was a special election. Maybe Hogan could win it, but because Trump's on the ticket, even if he gets like 37, 38%, Hogan's still not going to be able to win. And that would be an improvement for Trump in Maryland, if you want to look at Maryland in 2020. And maybe because black turnout dips, Trump gains some, but he got 32%. Trump honestly has a better shot in California than he does in Maryland. That's not a hyperbole. That's not an exaggeration. That's just based off of how Maryland is. Even a lot of like the rural counties, well, they're not really rural, but the exurban areas are very blue. It doesn't really seem like Trump is going to even hit like 37, even if he hits like 35. So you'd have to outrun Trump on net by like 25 to 30. I know Hogan as a governor could do that, but as a Senate candidate, that's an entirely different ballgame. But I guess now he could try to like pivot because he already has the primary, which he already kind of was pivoting. Let's see. Let's go to Nebraska. Somebody said Phillips is winning a county. Is he really? He is. Now it's only 9 votes, so whatever votes remain, that's going to determine how the county goes. But like I said, in these rural areas where you have ancestral Dems, yeah, it is true that Dean Phillips, if they're going to vote in the primary, Dean Phillips is going to be going out there and running up the score. North Carolina runoffs, we covered it. It's over. Turnout's meh, but I mean, Weatherman was always going to win big, and he did. Now, the auditor's race is still too close to call, but does anybody honestly care about the auditor's race? I feel like that's not even like a political position as much as people make, especially for a primary. Like, does anybody really care if their auditor is a rhino? Like, well, what exactly would that even entail? Like, maybe if they want to run for statewide office, it'd be a problem because they'd have name recognition. But it's like, does anybody know the auditor? I don't know. I just can't bring myself to care that much about the election. Basically, you're a state accountant. That's basically what you'd be doing. So, did Brad Knott win? Yes, he did. He did. Brad Knott's percentage, 90. He got 90% of the vote. 90%. As Trump gets closer to 75 in Nebraska, he's definitely going to hit 80. As the votes have come in initially, he was in the 60s. Now he's at 75. He's going to keep going up. So let's go back to Maryland. Yeah, Trump is at 79.9. He's going to hit 80. Parrott's good. Yeah, there's nothing new. We've covered everything. We've gotten every call. West Virginia, did we get the... We haven't gotten the Morrissey call, but it's going to happen. I mean, there's just no way he's not going to win. There's 15% left. There need to be an 11,000 vote gap that would be made up in about 30,000, which means that he's only getting like 20% of the vote or lower than that. They probably have called it on some network. I guess we can basically call it now a victory for West Virginia. They're getting a gubernatorial upgrade. Trump endorsed Pat Morrissey. Likely will win in November as well. I think we can close that case. I think that it seems like all these other races have been decided. So we can go back to the other races. In Maryland, we could look at that. Trump's is still not at 80. It's going to hit 80. I guess they're counting the election day vote now, and then I guess they have more early ballots or something they're going to count later. But it does seem as if it's not going to matter. David Trone's done. They called it for Also Brooks. There's not enough votes left. That's kind of an upset because even though she led some of the final polls, I don't think a lot of people anticipated that she would go out there and win, but she exactly has done just that. Let's see. The Hill called it for more. Well, there you go. They called it for Morrissey. I called it for Morrissey. If a network calls it, we can call it. That's the rule. Because I know in 2020 there was like concern. If you call a state before somebody else does, then, you know, it's a lot of potential trouble you can get in or whatever. But I don't think that they're going to do that as much this time around because they're just not. But either way, like Florida, we knew was going to go to Trump, but CNN didn't call it for another 3 hours after the winner was apparent. Texas, 2 hours after. Indiana took them 2 to 3 hours to call. 2016, they called it at poll closings, but there was no evidence that Trump wasn't in a strong standing to win the state. But then they called Virginia at poll closings without any votes reported. So it's like, if you're going to do that, then you got to at least call states like Texas at poll closing, you name it. But they didn't do it. Colts for Super Bowl says, I get to vote Trump first time next week in Kentucky. Well, enjoy it. My first vote for Trump was in the 2020 general election. Didn't vote in the primary, but I did vote in the general. And I look forward to the next vote for Trump come November. That's going to be huge. Probably not in November, probably October. Probably going to do it early. Don't want it hanging over my head. People need to vote as soon as they can. That's what they don't get. Trump gets it now, though. So I think more people will. Trump hit 75 with 30% reporting. Sarpy County, 7,500 votes. But Douglas County, he's going to get closer to 40,000. Biden, well, seems like he's going to get close to 40,000 too. So you can do the math on that one. What percent does Bacon have? Yeah, that's a good question. 66. So his numbers have gone down, but they called him the winner. That's exactly what I thought would happen. Seems like Sarpy County was the one that he'd be at risk of doing the worst in. But I just think that people were being electabros with their vote, which I understand to an extent because who could win that seat besides Bacon? Could the other guy? Well, maybe if Trump is a good showing, but we'll see. Bacon is very hard to beat in a primary and a general, for better or worse. So it is what it is. He's a rhino. If he loses in November, it's not like a lot of value would be lost, but ideally we have as many House seats as we can have. Vote early, vote often. Democrats vote in all these little special elections and Republicans don't. And you see what happens. So it's like we need to vote early and often as well. I don't see why we can't. Voting is a good thing. If you don't vote, you have to deal with the consequences of it. So actually, we could put out a poll about this, actually. How many people didn't vote in 2020 but will vote for Trump in 2024 or didn't vote for Trump in 2020? Here we go. We could do voted for him twice or will vote for him again. Voted in 2020. And then we can have didn't vote in 20, will vote for him, or didn't vote in 2020, will vote Trump 24. I guess we could do, this is technically too long. I used to say no vote in 20. There we go. A little bit grammatically iffy, but take it at face value. Technically, if you didn't vote at all, just don't vote in the poll. Or if you don't support Trump at all, don't vote in the poll. But I'm pretty sure 99% of people here do. So And honestly, don't vote in the poll if you're not old enough to vote in 24. So again, about 40% of you didn't even vote for Trump in 2020. Now, some of that could be age bias. We got a lot of young people in college who couldn't vote last time. But it's a lot of people. It's a lot of people either way. I don't know why that might be, but you look at this. What some guy said that he was sick. I mean, you got to vote early. You don't know if you're going to be sick. You might not get out of bed. Who knows what's going to happen? We need to save this country. If you know how you're going to vote, there's no business not voting early. If you don't trust the mail, then don't mail it in. Just like do it in person early or just take the ballot to the polling place. Yeah, it's 69-31 voted versus didn't but will. So again, a lot of that could be college kids. A lot of that could be whatever, but there's a lot of people who probably were old enough that didn't vote for Trump last time. They need to vote this time. There's no excuses. I mean, the primary is one thing. You don't vote in the primary, whatever. Trump was going to win it anyways. I think it's a bad mindset to have. I get it, but I mean, realistically, it's not going to be like a detriment. But if, yeah. Now, like I said, a lot of that could be age distribution bias. But I'm just saying, people need to vote. Not a lot of if you look at my audience demographics, which I could pull up on my YouTube studio, and we could look at the audience demography. We could even say of the last big stream we did, we could look at it for Indiana. If we could see the age, apparently not there, but we can go to the maybe the Pennsylvania one has a big enough sample size, and it does. Only 8.4% of the audience is age 18 to 24. So I think that this is a deeper problem than just that. Even if it's 10% of people of age that support Trump that didn't vote, it's a problem. That's the only poll that matters. You know, we need people voting, period. John Waffle says if you're in a deep blue district, doesn't matter. If you're talking about voting for Trump or voting for Congress, I think it should matter. I think people should do it anyways. There's no excuse. Don't not vote just because, you live in Hawaii. You never know what could happen, first of all. I mean, obviously, it'd be the upset of a century, but we need to make gains. You got to care about moving the needle a little bit. If we get 36%, it's better than getting 32%. You know, it helps the popular vote. That's kind of what you need to do. Help the popular vote. It gives them more of a mandate. So I think that it doesn't matter where you live, you need to vote. Is it true that it's more of a duty? If you live in a swing state, you can make that case. But still, you never want to leave anything off the table. I'll stop the poll when it gets to like 500 votes or so, because it's kind of stabilizing. But voting matters. Voting is a big deal. A big deal. Might not seem like it. Might seem, why do I got to get out of bed and do it? You got to do it. Doesn't matter. You don't get to complain about what happens in society if you don't. Plain and simple. Doesn't matter if you lose by 1 or 10. I mean, there's elections I probably could have voted in and didn't. And that's not good. Not saying it's good at all. Obviously, I voted in 2020. But that's not the point. Colts for Super Bowl 49 says you see, or 59 says you see poll Trump up by 5 in Washington. Yeah, and it should be thrown in the garbage because it's not going to happen. Yeah, Trump hit 80 in Maryland. Nebraska, he's going to hit 80. Look at these places, he's at 90%. But some of these other counties, there are a lot of election day votes that haven't been counted yet. Dylan Allen for 10 says voted for Clinton in 16, had a change of heart in 18, voted for Trump in 20, and will vote again for Trump in 24. I'm 28 and have voted in every election, and that includes the primaries. Well, it's true. They say, who's Trump adding to his coalition? A lot of people. I mean, do you have people that are like, I voted for Trump twice, I can't take it anymore, 1-6, whatever? I think that they exist, but they're not as high in number as the voters who voted for Biden and got screwed and now want to vote for Trump. That's it. because that's what's going to determine the election, who loses more votes, because you're probably going to have a lower propensity election. Right? Not fully, but lower turnout since 2020. So whoever loses the most, they lose. Because you already have no room for error for pretty much either side. And if Biden goes out there and he gets only 90% of his base out, but Trump gets 93% of his, that's ball game. Trump wins. Like, that's the way people need to be looking at this. The new voters, according to every metric and every poll, are overwhelmingly backing Trump. Now, maybe they don't happen to show up at ridiculously high rates, but still, it's a little bit beside the point. Yeah, Trump is now in Baltimore City. He cracked 70. He's going to crack 70 in these other places. He's fine. He's going to end up in the 80s. I don't know what percent he's going to get, though. Irma Gersh says, is Allred a real threat to Cruz? No. Allred is not a threat to anybody. He's always been overrated. He's not even been an overperformer. And again, Trump is not at risk of losing Texas. If he was, maybe you could make the case to be a competitive Senate race, but absolutely not. Ted Cruz is the most vulnerable Republican incumbent, arguably, and even then, he's going to be just fine. No question about it. So we're almost to 500 votes. The poll gets stopped at 500. But that's crazy. 28% didn't. Now, some of that might be young people, but that's not a big portion of the audience. Maybe you could say that makes up half of that 30-ish percent. All right, we're ending it. There we go. 503, 7128. So there, yeah, that's exactly true. In terms of the total in the poll, whichever way you want to look at it, there's a segment of the population who's politically in tune now that wasn't then. Now, maybe you have people that voted then that don't vote now. That's true, but I mean, I think there might be more people on the other side that fit that designation. Maybe that's, going to be rebutted with, oh, well, what about some of these other races, special elections, but their turnout's so piss poor, but it's really hard to gauge. Because Democrats do better in special elections than they've been doing in the general for quite some time. I think it's an educational breakdown and also shows Republicans need a better turnout apparatus, which could be a problem, but I don't believe it's the most ridiculous problem in the world. They still haven't called it for Morrissey, but he's got it. All right, we'll go to Maryland. The Trump-Biden gap in Maryland is only 7%. And that's with Maryland being filled with a lot of neoliberal type of Democrats. And that's with the Republican Party of Maryland being filled with a lot of people who would just love Nikki Haley. So take it or leave it, guys. He's not doing poorly for this primary or West Virginia. Nebraska, even then, his total is going to go up. So I'm not particularly worried about it because Haley basically has been stuck at that many votes for quite some time. I think Robinson will lose. Well, Robinson might lose, but I don't believe that it's going to be a blowout. And the people that thought he'd weigh down Trump or something are just stupid, because it's not about the governorship. It's about the top of the ticket when it comes down to presidential elections. And Trump is going to help Robinson more than Robinson is going to hurt Trump. Now, I hope he wins. He needs to win. But if he loses, it's it's disappointing, but it's not like it's the end of the world for Republicans. Trump's probably going to take the state by 4-ish. And I think that Robinson's probably it's going to be close. It's going to be razor thin. Razor thin. Yeah, honestly, Stein embracing Biden is kind of a bad move on his part. It's not like he's running this great campaign either. It's there's a lot of things you could hit Robinson for that he said in the past, but surprisingly, the polling is pretty stagnant. He's not he's not Doug Mastriano levels of unwilling to fight back, and his record's probably got more baggage, but he just owns it. So they call it against Dunn. Yeah, the grifter goes down in Maryland. The grifter goes down. They haven't called it here, but the 3rd district goes to the other person. Colts for Super Bowl says Biden's strategy is of just gaslighting is interesting. Yeah, you would think that like you'd have to be more of like a sociopath to like attempt that strategy and have it work out. It just really goes to show how the American people perceive it. So far, they're not liking it. Robinson in the House would be good if he does fall short. I agree. He give these powerful sermons on the House floor and being like a R plus whatever district, R plus 30. Most of the states have shifted right in the presidential level, but North Carolina for the most part is trending blue. That's just not true. Like trends, if you look at trends, yeah, if you want to compare it to like 2000, you'd be right. But if you want to compare it to like 2012, seeing the shift, North Carolina's trended right every election, not by a lot, but even in 2020, it moved right by like 0.05% compared to the national environment. I don't think that changes this time. I don't think it's going to be deep red. I don't think it's going to be as close as it was in 2020 either, because not a lot of people have moved over the past 4 years, period. The economy is not really moving for a lot of people, no pun intended. So yeah, but down ballot, it's a different state. Down ballot, it's a more, I guess you would say, independent type of state. I don't think Robinson is a uniquely bad candidate just because he has some baggage. He did win in 2020. But I think that just beating not an incumbent, but a Democrat office holder that is going to get a lot of money, who's running for governor in general, I don't think anybody would be really that capable of winning that seat. Dan Forrest, I mean, he already lost. Now, it is harder to beat an incumbent Democrat, but still. It did not go left from 2016 to 2020 because you have to compare it to the national environment. Trend is not the same thing as a swing. It moved left, but did it trend left? No, it did not trend left. Now, if you're seeing an even popular vote this time, which is what the polls are showing, and maybe you don't get it, but if the popular vote moves right, North Carolina is guaranteed to move right, assuming that the trend continued. Now, trends are not infinite. They are finite. They will stop at a certain point. But to say it's trending blue, not entirely accurate. Garrett Vranikar says, will Hogan running help congressional races? Yeah, we covered that. I believe it will. So, let's see. 87.2% for Biden. 80% on the nose for Donald Trump. They called it for also Brooks. Have they called it for Morrissey on New York Times? I mean, they have to be doing it soon. Yeah, you're up to 92%, and his lead actually stayed the same. There's not enough votes for him to realistically lose at this point. Basecat says you can do a Trump verdict prediction vid. Well, if it happens when the verdict happens, that's going to be huge. We'll see what happens in the verdict. I think that Trump is... I think hung jury is most likely. Now, maybe he does get convicted, but it takes one. The case is so bad. But, I mean, we know the jury is biased. We know that there's the just automatic no vote coming from so many people regardless of what happens. But who knows? It just takes one. Pray and maybe we will receive. Who knows? John Waffle says, are you a fan of John Posobiec? No, because that's not a real person. You mean Jack Posobiec. Am I a fan of his? I mean, he's all right. I mean, I don't really keep tabs. He's very good at social media. He has millions of followers. He kind of was like one of the few Trump people that I used to follow on my old Twitter from 2016 that just doesn't exist anymore. But other than that, I don't have strong opinions on him. He's very good at social media, I guess. There's no new votes. Where are the votes? Give us votes. Give us something. We don't have anything. But we'll probably go for another, I don't know. I'm not going to do this all night. It's 9:21 in the Central Time Zone. I do think he obsessed over Oz too much, I agree. He kind of basically supported McCormick and definitely kind of, I think he did feed the base a lot of bad a lot of bad opinions about Dr. Oz, and that might have hurt him a little bit in the general. Doug says, when do you think the trial will end, help or hurt? I mean, I assume it's ending in a few weeks, isn't it? I think that regardless, they're backed into a corner where it's going to help them, but who knows? Trump's numbers went up during the trial. Will they stay up when he's not under this legal stuff? I don't know. I hope so, but we'll see. Wednesday, I think, is the day that Trump gets to campaign, but I don't think he has anything going on, maybe a fundraiser or something. But yeah, Oz was not really a good candidate in retrospect. I never thought he was at the onset of it, because you have somebody who basically had little ties to Pennsylvania running. I didn't think it'd be as big of a deal as it was. And it is true, the base didn't like him, but nobody knew who Mastriano was, and they didn't really turn out for him either. And there were other concerns in that department. Yeah, and somebody said people that are moving to North Carolina are conservative. I'm assuming some are. I know not all of them are, but I mean, a lot of people that are moving there, I would say, are more conservative, or at least it's 50-50. I think in general, a lot of people that move to states, it's never lopsided, except like Colorado, where liberals just took it over, or Florida, where conservatives did the same, but it's mainly an age thing. Yeah, I mean, look, Pennsylvania there was no option, because you had basically Barnett, who seemed well-meaning, well-intentioned, but in many ways she was just the Senate version of Mastriano, a lot of baggage potentially. Trump didn't want to endorse her. And then you had McCormick, who's running now, who also, like Oz, was a social liberal who had little to no ties to Pennsylvania, maybe a little bit more than Oz did, and he didn't like have the celebrity thing. I still think that McCormick would have lost, but yeah, I can't say that Oz was like the worst candidate given the circumstances or the best, but John Fetterman was like mentally broken, and he won. He won. He was mid. We called him MAGA Amendment. We tried. I tried, okay? I tried. As somebody who said negative things about him in the primary, I tried. It just wasn't enough, and the polls were just not all that good down the stretch, and I think I've explained why in several videos, including this live stream. I think somebody asked me about 2022. But yeah, I think McCormick would have done like a point or two better. I think he would have done worse in eastern Pennsylvania, possibly. Better in western Pennsylvania. We'll see how he does this time. You know, if he goes out there and wins, then we know, hey, maybe he would have beat Fetterman. But if he loses by like 4 and Trump still narrowly wins Pennsylvania, then he's just not that good of a candidate. I know that Bob Casey is decent, but like for a Democrat electorally speaking, he's a fraud. Nick H. is, what does Trump likely need to get margin-wise in Macomb to carry Michigan? I think it depends more on Wayne than Macomb. If he's able to get 10 points net in Wayne, he's in good shape. If he gets 10 in Macomb, he's on point, on track to get his target. I'm not entirely sure what he gets. Also, Oakland. He possibly could gain a point or two in Oakland. Oakland is a very intriguing county. It's a very auto industry heavy county, and Republicans still have a decent floor there, and a lot of gains there just also happen to be people moving from Wayne to Oakland. So, yeah, I think that it depends on several counties. It depends on turnout in some places. What happens in Ann Arbor and Lansing? What about turnout there? Like, there's a lot of things at play. So Trump keeps gaining. Biden keeps faltering. Apparently, Dean Phillips did win that county, despite, I guarantee you, how many of those 5 voters even know what Dean Phillips looks like? Probably like none of them. But yeah, Michigan, like the midterms are one thing. Midterm years you can't use to predict presidential ones. If you do that on either side, you're going to be burned. I thought Georgia, because Kemp won and Abrams was like the star candidate, I thought there's zero shot Georgia's going to flip. There's things they don't account for, but now you're seeing it with some of these other places like Michigan. Just because Democrats had a good year doesn't mean they're guaranteed. A lot of metrics that matter for these like local races or statewide races don't matter at the presidential level. Yeah, Oakland County is Pontiac, but Pontiac doesn't have that many people. Like Waterford is probably, you could say, moving right, or it would move right, and has more people than Pontiac. Like Oakland County in and of itself is a very big county, but Pontiac is not a big city. It used to be the biggest city, but Pontiac probably moves right because that's like the only place where you have any Hispanics in Oakland County. But the county did lose population too. It lost 4,000 people since 2020, which is technically something. But there's like, it's a very intriguing county to analyze, not just based off of like race in and of itself, but based off of like ethnic means, because there's so many nuances to the white vote. For example, whites make up, 60 or 70 some percent of the county, but then you have 6% of the county's Italian. You have, I'm looking at this chart here. You've got the Greek vote, the Armenian vote. They combine for like 2%. They're probably going to move right. Assyrians, Arab voters in general, not a lot of them happen to be Muslim. Those are more of like the voters down in Dearborn. But there's a lot to analyze regarding Oakland County at large and its voting patterns. A lot of like Central Eastern European groups that have been moving right in certain suburbs. You saw it more in Macomb County. But it's like there's a lot there. There's a lot there to analyze. 14% of the population is black. I feel like it's higher than that, but I think that the county is definitely, I wouldn't say winnable, of course, but I think that Trump could gain. Trump definitely could gain a little bit just because of the auto industry, if not for anything else, but also the crime crisis. You have these migrants, these gangs from Chile that are coming and they're ransacking houses in well-to-do areas. I feel like people are really starting to see what the border crisis is causing, and it's not really going to bode too well for Biden if people can think about that when they're going to the voting booth. Matthew Foxtrot says, hey, if you're playing devil's advocate, that's a very intriguing way to spell advocate. Which Dem would you run to beat Trump, if any? Great show. Well, I mean, I don't know, because Biden might be the right answer. Because why are you going to try to oust a sitting president when all these other people are polling worse against Trump? I mean, you could say, oh, we'll run a generic Democrat. That was the point of Biden, and then we see what's happening. So, and whatever Democrat you put up there is going to be somebody who would already kind of be in a position where they're going to have to distance themselves from this administration. So I can't exactly see there being a single candidate that, oh, the Democrats could run and win. Like, we could speculate, but it doesn't quite matter. There's so many different circumstances at hand. It's like the Bernie would have won people. Like, no, he wouldn't. I mean, the guy would have probably prompted a Michael Bloomberg third-party challenge to begin with, who would have definitely taken a great deal of votes away from, a hypothetical Hillary Clinton matchup. Instead of, or if you replace Hillary with Bernie, a lot of the Hillary voters would probably go directly to somebody like a Bloomberg. And the guy's policy is just too radical and out of step with the American public. I mean, the socialist moniker hits if you're facing him, but when Trump tried to do it on Biden, it's just like, no. And I'm so glad he dropped it. Like we always try to go out there and say, you're a socialist. Like, no, it doesn't work. I'm so glad we've dropped that. Like, has anyone really noticed that? That used to be a thing. Oh, the socialist, the radical socialist. It's like you're running against a neoliberal. Define your opponent as a corrupt globalist who wants open borders like Hillary Clinton. That's what he's doing, and that's why he's winning. I mean, look at it. The 2020 campaign had flaws, and it seems like those flaws are not present, and it's a good thing. So that's partially why I'm so hyped for a Trump victory, and I believe it's more likely to happen now than ever, and a second term where Trump's going to be surrounded with better people that are going to be able to really get whatever part of his agenda done that he was not able to get done in the first term. So there's that. And now Trump is getting closer to 77. So that's that. I mean, there's nothing else to really cover. Maryland, Trump crossed 80%. So That's actually good for him for being Maryland. He is getting closer to his total that he got in the 2020 primary there, which was not much higher. You have North Carolina, where Hale Weatherman is going to be the nominee for Republican lieutenant governor. We'll see if he wins. You have West Virginia, where Trump won big. Biden he's losing. He might get below 70. That's not good. He might get below his 20%. That's also not good for him. But Jim Justice wins. Patrick Morrissey, they called it. He won. It was a little underwhelming, but he still won. And then you look at all these other races, Republicans, John McCuskey with the AG race, the House races, Moore won, Miller won, no surprises. Down ballot, some other upsets that we see. Nebraska, Trump is going to get over 80. I don't know how much higher he's going to get past that, but we'll see. But then a lot of these rhinos ended up winning across the board there. So not like there's anything to brag about in terms of the rest of the state. Then Maryland, Biden again, 86.8 is not all that good. It's not all that good. You talk about Maryland, obviously it's going to go to him in November, but still 86. You would have thought he'd get 90, but apparently not. Then Trump, he's getting 80. He's not far behind Biden. Then you go to the Senate race, and you see Larry Hogan easily winning, no surprise there. But Angela Alsobrooks, kind of an upset. She's up by 11 points. That lead might go up, who knows. But then you go to the House, the grifter loss on the Democrat side. And then on the Republican side, it seems like Neil Parrott won. And there's some other races that don't matter in November. So John Waffle says Evans' loss is unacceptable. Well, it's hard to knock off an incumbent. I didn't even know that he was running for a seat that happened to be with an incumbent in it until probably a few weeks ago. So exposure matters and things like that. We'll see what happens in 2024. I hope we can 2026. I hope we can knock off some more incumbents, but we better be knocking them off in some deep red areas and prioritize those for sure, and go from there. Hopefully Trump will be in the White House, so we'll see. But either way, we have another election night in the books, and I think it's about time that we end the show. I guess we'll be doing a last call for Super Chats. Vanessa for 10 says, I love the content. Well, thank you for the Super Chat. Let's see what we got. John, what about John Tester? John Tester, I think, is going to lose. Great stream. Well, thank you. And before that, well, Nebraska's not done counting. If it stays below 80, then they'll talk about it. But how many people turned out? Not that many. Apparently, we'll hear about how Donald Trump is in trouble in Nebraska. It's like, okay. It's like saying Biden's in trouble in Maryland. You know, it's not going to, neither side's going to lose. Dave M for 30 says, I think the two lawyers on the jury won't vote to convict Trump. It was nice to see Republicans finally coming out and supporting Trump this week. It's true. I mean, even say what you will about Mike Johnson. I thought he did actually give a good speech at the outside the courthouse. You had Vivek, you had Corey Mills, J.D. Vance has been there, Tommy Tuberville. You have a lot of Republicans on kind of both sides of the party coming together to unite behind Trump in this ridiculous BS trial that's nonsense and just a spit in the face of every aspect of law, period. There's no possible way they could be defending this if they actually convict him, and it could really backfire if they do. So, I don't know, maybe Trump secretly wants to be convicted. Maybe he does. We'll see. But then you have the Florida case basically delayed forever. The other two trials, it doesn't seem like you're going to see them before the election. Michigan Nationalist says, will Utah go blue by 2028 or 2032? I believe so. I don't believe so. I think that's not really a good way of looking at it. I mean, it's growing, but they specifically also have an anti-Trump thing more so than an anti-Republican thing. They don't like his personality, some of these Mormons, some of these other people. But still, I think Trump's going to win it by close to 20. I think it's not going to be ready to flip anytime soon. Even if it does in the future, we'll see. John Waffle says, I'm officially 26. Well, happy birthday. I just had one, and you have one today. So have a good one. But I think that's going to do it for Super Chats, guys. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. It was a non-surprising primary night. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't like, oh, this is shocking. Although the Maryland Senate race thing is intriguing to say the least. But anyways, guys, we're going to be ending the show. Like the stream down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video or live stream. I will see you guys tomorrow. Red Eagle out.